Live. Dr. Brooks and all, we are live.
Good morning. Are we ready to begin?
We are.
Great. Thank you so much, Yvette. And welcome everyone to the third iteration of the South Florida Water Management District's Resiliency Coordination Forum. My name is Wes Brooks. I am the Chief Resilience Officer for the state of Florida, and it's my honor to welcome you all here today. Just as a little bit of an intro to the exciting morning that we have, as many of you are probably aware, a few weeks ago, the Florida legislature wrapped up a busy session, which was really quite productive for supplementing our resilience efforts in particular. When the governor signs the budget in the coming weeks, you can expect to see another $300 million for statewide resilience plan projects, $20 million for planning grants, $5.5 million for the Flood Hub, and another $2 million for regional resilience entity grants. We're fortunate to have my friend and colleague Eddie Boza from DEP here today to provide an update on the Resilient Florida program and likely to share details of how you can look to access that funding to accelerate your local projects. Southeast Florida can also look forward to some of the most robust state funding for coral reef conservation efforts in history, with the legislature agreeing to fund the governor's new Florida's Coral Restoration and Recovery Initiative. This new initiative aims to develop the infrastructure, technology, skilled workforce, and logistics necessary by 2050 to support the long-term recovery of no less than 25% of Florida's coral reef. This will restore a critical ecosystem in ways that support our economy and food production, revitalizes our environment, and strengthens coastal resilience and protection from storm surge. I'm looking forward to hearing from one of our local government partners who will benefit significantly from these coastal resilience efforts in Monroe County. Rhonda Haig has done a phenomenal job leading Monroe's resilience efforts, and the state is committed to doing all it can to continue supporting thriving communities along a truly iconic region of our state. And I know we're all looking forward to the release of the district's 2023 updated flood resiliency plan today. Finally, the statewide Office of Resilience continues to be encouraged by the Water Management District's thoughtful and transparent efforts to plan for and adapt to future challenges related to water supply and flood risk. We continue to provide support for their robust dialogue with the Corps of Engineers regarding the ongoing Section 216 Central and Southern Florida Flood Resiliency Study in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Southern Palm Beach counties, including fleshing out an appropriate scope of work, setting and funding a responsible timeline for completion, and encouraging the Corps to think strategically about how this study can translate and contribute to the comprehensive CNSF study that's expected to kick off in FY 2025. So we've got a lot of exciting resilience work in the pipeline, and with your help, we'll deliver a lot of amazing progress in the next few years. Like I said, we're just thrilled to have you and looking forward to a great morning. So I'll turn it back over to you, Yvette.
Great, thank you, Dr. Brooks. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to do a little housekeeping, and for participation for this meeting will be in person. This meeting is also being live streamed, so any questions and comments will be taken at the appropriate place on the agenda from those who are attending in person. There will be an opportunity for questions after each presentation. If you have a technical question for those in the public, please complete Section 5 of the public comment card. Public comments will be taken during the agenda item number 8, public comment from those present in the auditorium. If you would like to comment, please complete Section 6 of the public comment card and give to the attendant at the registration table. And these are for those sitting at the back seat area. We will have around the table for commenting. And then for representatives from local, tribal, and state organizations, we'll have an opportunity to provide agency updates during agenda item number 7. Now to you, Dr. Moran.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yvette. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to begin this morning. Thank you, everyone who took a train or drove all the way here to be with us this morning, and thank you, everyone who also joined us virtually. We have today the presence of Commissioner Furr from Broward County, and I would acknowledge his presence here, and we'd invite him to provide some opening remarks here along with us on the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you, Caroline. Good morning, everybody. Now, you have to hold. Oh, okay, it's different. First of all, this is my first time in this building. Beautiful building. The whole place is pretty cool. But I'm here for a request. I'm commissioner for Broward County, but I'm also on the South Florida Regional Planning Council. And we've had a joint meeting with the Treasure Coast Planning Council. Altogether, that represents a lot of people. And at our most recent conference that we had, it was a joint conference, we talked about the need for a lot of the projects that are happening in that region, particularly the CNSF study. And we were looking at what those needs are going to be far into the future, what the costs were going to be in the future, and they're in the billions. This group knows it better than any group. What we concluded was we wanted to ask the South Florida Water Management District to consider raising taxes. It hasn't done that in a long time. It is rolled back its rates for many, many years. And we thought, I've been an elected official for a long time, 25 years. It's not easy raising taxes. And the only way that usually you can do it is if you have a little bit of political cover. And that means you've got to have some people that are willing to say this is necessary and it's needed. And the South Florida Regional Planning Council, as well as we've already voted, the Treasure Coast didn't get a chance to vote because of timing. But we voted and sent the South Florida Water Management District a letter with this request. We think it's needed. We know what our future looks like if we don't have this money to do it. Yeah. Sure.
Mic a little bit closer.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. Okay. So I know this is more staff-oriented. I intend to be at the 16 County Coalition as well as at the next South Florida Water Management District itself. But you all have a lot of influence as well. You speak to lots of people. And we think this is the time to do this. And, I don't, even if we begin not to roll back, even not a rollback is a good. But I think when I look at the breadth of what this group does, it's enormous. It's enormous. And for it to be able to match funds that you all are trying to do, you need the funds as well. And I know that. I think we had a recurring study for Broward County that we were trying to do. And we were finding out that there wasn't enough funds to do just the study part. We've been trying to get enough money just to do the study on the CNSF study for a couple of years. That's only $3 million. When we're talking about billions in terms of the actual structures that are going to be needed. So I think it's time for us to start preparing for what the cost is. We know when that study's finished, we know what it's going to say. It's a formality going through that. We know what the costs are going to be. We know what has to be done. We know what it means. So a responsible governance says get prepared. And so we are asking for this, for a raise in the tax millage, and we hope that you can help us out there. And that's really my main request today. And you will have the backing of the counties that are part of the South Florida Regional Planning Council, and I believe you probably will with Treasure Coast as well. So that's my request, and just thought we laid that out there.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. This is definitely an important question that we have here, and we are here today to talk about the plan that does contain a lot of those project definitions. So thank you for the support. We really appreciate. We presented the plan and the CNSF at the Planning Council meeting, I believe 2 meetings ago. Drew was there, so we are all going around and really sharing what we learned and what we need, and starting to build the path for us to be able to go to get where we need to be.
Yeah, and this is not, I've said this, when we had the regional compact meeting, I brought it up there, and Drew's heard this, I think it was the Everglades Coalition, where we had a chance to bring it up as well. So it's nothing new, but we're trying to get a little bit of momentum for it.
Okay, thank you. Jen, all good? No, we needed to say? Okay, great. So let's go to some of the opening. I really have some quick updates here to begin with the meeting, and then I will transition to Dave, who is here to, oh, sorry, it's first Eddie, but so let me begin with some of the points, and I know Wes started with the legislation update, and I'm also going to start on the same topic. We had a great session, some important advances that was made, and I want to be able to highlight one of them. This is House Bill 111. It expanded the SLEEP area of applications, so it used to be the coastal boundaries, and now it's going to be the tidal influence areas. So any project that will be advanced with state funding in the tidal influence areas will it will be require a SLEEP study, so really understanding that we need to be looking at the sea level rise impacts, all those scenarios as recommended by the FDP. So that's a good and important step. On the same legislation, we also had the ability to have, recognizing the water management district roles also in providing support to adaptation planning efforts at the county, at the municipality levels. This is something that I know our level of service program got really excited about. We have been doing that for quite some time, really going around and offering the tools that we have, the data that we have, technical assistance as needed. I had a conversation with Keen yesterday and confirming that even things we are doing today, which can go all the way to the technical review, sharing scopes of work, sharing models that we have developed in the region. So anything that might be useful for counties and municipalities in advancing the vulnerability assessments, we are here to help. We have a team, the level of service team that is under Hongjing Zhao, Dr. Hongjing Zhao. She's the program manager for this. They are ready. They are really walking and making some important connections with the counties where we have studies undergoing and counties that we are going to be moving into in the next years. So again, we have models, we have tools, we have technical review, we can provide help even from the scoping phase. The program team is excited to be collaborating further with the counties, with the municipalities. I think we have achieved a lot in terms of doing vulnerability assessments for South Florida. I would say, I don't have the numbers, Wes will know, but we probably have 90% of the municipalities and all the counties already performing or performed their vulnerability assessments. The next step is really moving into adaptation planning. So what do we need? What kind of help do we need to be able to understand what are the best adaptation strategies that we have here? They also depend on some more advanced tools sometimes. There is need to integrate rainfall and all of that. So that's why we are here to just reinforce the ability to be working even further and closer with the counties and municipalities on this. I think it's a good and important point. It benefits regional coordination. All the water control districts are also on the same boat here. We all need to be working to understand our vulnerabilities and the best adaptation strategies, and we need to do that together. So again, count with the team, reach out to Akin, the chief of the H&H team, or Hongjing Zhao, the program manager, for the level of service for any support that you need on this effort. And we are happy to be partnering with the counties where we can. The next point that I have here is just our a quick status update on the awards that we receive, both from BRIC and Resilient Florida. We are excited to be working with FDEP and FDM on really advancing those agreements. We we are learning that implementing the grants can be as challenging as applying for those grants, and we are working very closely with the partners in all those projects, and also FDM and FDP. I would like to use this opportunity to introduce our new team member that is here really to take the head of implementation, Nafisa Hosseini. She's sitting there on the back. We are excited to have her, and I know she's already connecting with a lot of the partners on this and getting quickly up to speed on all those agreements and partnership agreements and contracts that we are developing right now. So exciting times. And we are already beginning coordination with the counties for new applications. They've had some of the meetings already with a few of the counties to start looking for project opportunities, collaboration opportunities where we want to be where we're going to be focusing our attention on this upcoming cycles of those major programs, BRIC and Resilient Florida, but also we know there is more opportunities out there. There is something coming from FDO. I don't have any information on that, but I know that we're going to have funding through FDO as well this year. Still on the topic of grant awards, this is some good news. We received funding from FDP Innovative Tech program. This is we call it our Wipeout project. It's a very nice, exciting opportunity that we have. We are developing this at the C7 Basin. Little River in Miami County. That was something that was pushed by in partnership with Miami-Dade County. So we are beginning, again, negotiations with that. But what we have there is the opportunity to look at a very important issue, the water quality issue, discharge to Biscayne Bay. We have a role in that, just understanding that we are all managing the water, and we want to be able to test technologies, approaches that perhaps can be implemented in a larger scale to reduce pollutants. So we are testing 3 technologies there. One is a smart sponge. We also have a pellet with some absorption material, and also regular bioabsorption media on the lands, banks, and some of the secondary canal discharges at this basin. So excited, we are beginning to set that up as well. But again, really promising opportunity to see what we can do and really collaborate and partner with Miami-Dade County on that, understanding that we can implement new technologies that will assist on all the water quality goals that we have for the region as well. Next quick update, I know we have Tim Geisen here today. He's our CNSF flood resiliency study. I know Wes made some really good remarks when during his opening remarks today. We are really still on the final phase of scoping and budgeting for this study. You have, if you watched the last governing board meeting, 2 before, we presented a budget revision and a new schedule for this study. This is what we were expecting from the very beginning. We knew this study would be much larger than the 3x3x3 format. So we are in the process of getting all this waiver to be able to advance to begin this study on where we need to be. This waiver is being presented very early in this stage of implementation and plan formulation, which gives us some uncertainties too. So we are really trying to navigate on what we know we can do, what are the tools that will be required, what are the resources that will be required. It takes some time to align all of that and also recognize uncertainties that we have along the way. But we are making progress. I'm sure Tim will share a little bit more. And he also going to be talking, the Army Corps, on the concept of comprehensive benefits. This is very important. Even if we're dealing with a single-purpose study, the 216 is a flood risk management study, we have opportunities to address more comprehensively some of the benefits that we want to be able to capture to the project. So this presentation today will be very important, and we're excited to hear about that too. While we are navigating on this path of federal appropriations and really redesign of our CNSF system, our old citizen, Mike Irella likes to say, we are really continuing to advance our flood vulnerability assessments, adaptation planning, and really recommending those non-regret strategies to enhance critical components of the system, the CNSF and also the BCB. So that's why we're here today as one of the major agenda items too. I want to really give a big shout out to Dave. He is our he has 2 hats. He has more than 2, but big hats. He's our plan coordinator, and he's also grant manager. So he has been working intensively for the past, I would say, months, weeks, and really dedicated to this planning process. And we are here with some exciting new projects on the plan today, new recommendations from the level of service that were incorporated to the plan from the more recent studies. We have new CIP projects that we are coordinating very closely with our CIP program as well. And we have, after Hurricane Ian, some of the project recommendations there too. We started coordination with some of the counties and our internal teams here, recognizing that we saw significant flooding and some limitations on the system. So we see opportunities really to bring some of those post-storm projects and start looking for funding opportunities. So we have some innovative projects too. I don't want to give any spoiler here. I know Dave is excited to talk about that, but anyway. And finally, on my opening topics today, just one final one is collaboration. We have Rhonda here today from Monroe County. She's going to be talking about vulnerability assessments, flood vulnerability assessments from her county. This is really excited to be having one more county joining us, presenting and sharing the path and the progress they are making. This is why we are all here. We really want to be able to hear from all of you to understand where you are, provide details on what are the findings, where you need some support, where you need collaboration. I think that's the main goal. With that, I would like to just say thank you again to everybody that joined us this morning, and we'll start with moving to our agenda items. So thank you. With that, I will invite Eddie Boza, the Program Manager Director from Resilient Florida Program, to start with the first presentation of today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Eddie. You're live.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. My name is Eddie. I'm with the Resilient Florida Program. I've put together a slide deck that is kind of our general program overview. We're sort of on tour, if you will, during this time of the year as we lead up to the grant opportunity and the portal, the application portal opening. So I've included all the slides here just as a take home for you, for those that are going to get the slides distributed. We're not going to cover every slide. This presentation can be, anywhere from 20 minutes to all day, really. I could certainly talk about the program at length, but we'll skim through and I'll kind of highlight some of the recent updates and the legislative changes. I appreciate Carolina, you covering some of that. That's very helpful for me. But the program's pretty new, and I hope that I'm not introducing the program to anybody on this call or in attendance, but it was established in 2021. The Senate Bill 1954 and the House Bill, the companion bill, unanimously passed. It was incredible to see. Looking back on it, I wasn't actually in DEP at the time, and watching that legislation go through and seeing the young Representative Brusada Cabrera on the House floor and presenting the bill and the body waiving rules and reading it multiple times and getting it passed unanimously was certainly a sight to see. And at the time, the Speaker of the House remarked following that passage of that bill that the remarkable achievement that had been done by this legislation and on a national scale had never seen anything like this. This investment in the state's future, planning for flooding and sea level rise is certainly something that is in the forefront of our state's mind, with so many coastlines and so many low-lying areas in the non-coastal communities as well. So that became law in July 1st, 2021, and we got to work. We started getting the team together, bringing the leadership team on and hiring our team members, and we actually opened a grant application portal that July, and we're ranking and evaluating projects as soon as that October following July 1. So really stood up pretty quickly. First couple of years, and you can go to the next slide, we had some lessons learned. There were some legislative changes in the following year, mainly including some better defined, more definitions, more eligible entities, more access for financially disadvantaged communities, But the biggest change was when the legislation was first introduced, there was a ceiling, if you will. There was a $100 million cap. You're not going to spend more than $100 million on this in any given year. Well, you know, the tides changed, I suppose, you know, pun intended, and that was reversed to create a floor of $100 million. And so in 2022, a bill was passed that said, you're going to spend at least $100 million on this. This is how important this is to the state to set up this framework and set up the planning and the implementation and the statewide assessment is so important to the state that you're going to spend at least $100 million a year. And so that really turned us upside down a little bit, slightly terrifying, but you know, we geared up and we got a couple more positions in the program to help manage, you know, the massive number of grants that is going to result from that change. And we're here heading into our third year. So I was also going to cover some of those changes that Carolina covered. So that was that House Bill 111. But I don't need to cover that anymore, I don't think, and I'll save some time for questions in case there are any. So we're going to really fly through the rest of this because I want to show you just kind of the program overview slide and then sort of what we're doing in the lead up to the portal, and then leave the rest of the time for questions. I think I have about 10 to 15 minutes. So the program has 4 or 5 different areas. There's the grant program for planning grants. These are all managed by the same grant managers in the same section, but we've got planning grants for communities to do vulnerability assessments. We've talked at length about that, and we'll talk more later. The regional resilience entity grants, these are coalitions of local governments, primarily have taken the form of the regional planning councils lately, but any sort of formation of local governments that are designed to advance the resilience of the region can qualify for funding for activities to help support the program or other local governments that are doing their own assessments or standing up projects. Dr. Brooks mentioned earlier the Florida Flood Hub for Applied Science. That's out of the University of South Florida. They're sort of the research arm of the program and our academic support. They're working on several initiatives that I'd be happy to cover if you have questions. There's the comprehensive statewide data set and assessment. We're actually going to be receiving this week a semi-complete comprehensive data set from, we've been working with a contractor in identifying publicly available data sets that include where critical assets are located across the state. And they've compiled 60 or more different data sets from state, local governments, and federal sources so that we can identify the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of critical assets that are across the state. And then we're going to be working with the Florida Flood Hub to use that locational data set to generate the statewide flooding and sea level rise assessment. So we're not only funding local governments to do their own vulnerability assessments, but we're also doing a statewide assessment, and that would include some form of an online tool that you can see where the vulnerabilities are and where all the critical assets are located so that we can prioritize funding to those most vulnerable areas. And then the statewide flooding and sea level rise resilience plan is our plan for implementation projects over the next 3 years. And that's released every December for the legislature to consider funding. And as Dr. Brooks mentioned, stands to receive another significant boost this year if that budget is signed and becomes law as is, and we would be getting a lot more projects out there. So let's just zoom through. We'll just do one at a time. I'll give you a quick, this is a timeline. So if you're interested in looking how we began and over time, all of our announcements and projects and portal openings. So we can keep going. Next slide. The timeline leading up into now. Currently, we do have a webinar series that's ongoing. We're trying to increase access to the information and the program. And as we approach year 3, it's really important to us to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to apply, has an opportunity to ask questions. We've sort of, in my opinion, had unprecedented access to our team and our grant managers and our evaluators to really help applicants as they're preparing for July 1st and submitting those projects. We've done a webinar on the adaptation planning guidebook, which helps tell you about the vulnerability assessment process. Our rule guidance is going to be out very soon. We did a webinar on how to use that guidance. The guidance is going to lay out the statute, the rule, examples of projects in the past, the responses that they've given that have received funding, a lot of hot tips and helpful hints. And then we're going to open up for just general Q&As. We're going to do a portal walkthrough in June. We're also talking about doing, and I think there's a slide at the end which will cover more, but we're doing in-person workshops. We have one in Palm Beach, I believe, towards the end of June. That's being put on by, I believe, Megan Houston and the American Flood Coalition. So we're partnering with them to just be there, be available, ask questions, get hints, whatever it might be. We also have some office hours that are scheduled, which we'll cover at the end. Let's go through the next couple slides. This is just a distribution of the planning grants that we've had across the state. And the important thing here is every county is highlighted. And so we're really proud to say that at the conclusion of the vulnerability assessments that we have funded in the first 2 years, every county in Florida will have a vulnerability assessment. And a large portion of the municipalities have either undergone their own efforts or are working with their county to complete their own VAs. So that's really exciting. We've had some regional groups put in for their region. You can see up in the North Panhandle area, the regional resilience entity did an assessment for all of their member counties. We've had local efforts funded through other agencies. I believe Pasco County and Charlotte County had already been underway on their own efforts, and we're adjusting to meet our statute, and then the rest of the state has received funding either in the first or our second offering. Next slide. And so we'll just keep moving on. This is the timeline. So we mentioned the portal opening in July. Will be open until September 1st, so about 2 months to get your applications in. And then we work over the next couple of months to rank, score, evaluate all the projects. We received about 270 applications last year, so you could imagine, there's a lot of effort and time that goes into that to prepare that report that will be due December 1st. Next slide. Just an overview about what the plan is. It's a 3-year rolling plan. The projects are ranked and scored. Let's move on to the next slide. There is a scoring criteria, so this is why that guidance will help, and that recorded webinar is available on our website, and that guidance will be out very soon. But there's a statutory scoring criteria, and we actually created a rule. We went through a rulemaking process to further define the scoring criteria. So it's really important that applicants understand where they might be able to get points in our scoring criteria. And some of the scoring criteria actually requires backup documentation to receive the full amount of points. So the key to really getting the funding is to understand how your project fits in with the scoring, how you can set up your application to communicate that you meet a certain criteria to receive the points. And there's some inherent value in, I don't want to say value, that might not be the right word, but projects that are currently undergoing flooding or have had severe or frequent flooding, projects that have natural systems restoration or revegetation are gonna kind of rise to the top just based on the scoring criteria. Projects that are ready, so things that have permitting and design are getting points in areas that we had less than 5% of the applications that we received last year actually had their permitting and design done and were shovel ready, and they're receiving points that nobody else is receiving. And so that really puts you up in the scoring criteria when it comes to competing for funding. Between design and permitting alone, you could receive, I think it's, I don't want to quote me on it, 12 to 15 points if you have design and permitting and you're shovel ready. And we were funding projects that were scoring about 30 points. So you're almost halfway to funding if you have shovel ready projects. So that's really important to know. Let's move on to the next one. This is just a visualization of the different projects that were provided in last year's state plan report. This is pending the state budget, and it actually doesn't represent the $300 million that Dr. Brooks mentioned earlier. So we actually put forward a plan and received more appropriation in the proposed budget than we expected. So this isn't super up to date, but The one thing I want to point out here is we've got a lot of evacuation and transportation routes that were put forward and a lot of natural systems, living shorelines, and erosion control. So in our first year, we saw more stormwater, more water, wastewater projects. My opinion is I think those were the projects that are higher up on local community improvement plans. And so those naturally kind of got put in first, and now people are kind of putting forward some of those other projects. So that's really great to see. Next slide quickly is just the program overall to date. You can see the distribution, those same categories. And the big highlight, I guess, is the over $1 billion invested to date, not including the $300 billion that was recently discussed. But that's just for informational purposes. So next slide, I think, and this is, we're also establishing our field liaison team. There's one of our field liaisons is located right there in the building at the district. Sabrina is located there. We also have Kylie in Titusville, and filling a position that's recently vacated in St. Pete. So we're really trying to, again, include or increase access to the program. We're going to have field liaisons that can visit the sites, meet with grantees, check in on progress, and that team is getting stood up, and we're really excited about that. Next slide. So here's the pre-application support. We've been open, quote unquote, since April 1st. We're doing office hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I believe it's Tuesday mornings and Thursday afternoons. I'll put something in the chat for the people that are online. You can just join our Teams meeting and just ask questions. We're doing the webinar series. We can actually you can fill out an application and we'll have somebody evaluate it and tell you how you did. So we can provide hints, tips. Hey, if you're going to fill out the application like this, make sure you have a picture of the high water mark that you recently, experienced flooding in Fort Lauderdale, or maybe it's that news report or an inspection report or something. You can get maximum points if you do this. We've got the webinar series and our contact information. And then we're also, again, I mentioned, looking at doing sort of a road show of sorts where we're going to be on site, available, open office hours, one in Palm Beach coming up. I'd be happy to partner with the district if they'd like to do one at another time in another location. Or I noticed we had a Broward County representative, happy to get out in those communities as well and hold whatever we can do. As long as we kind of have 30 to 40 days notice ahead of time to get all the necessary travel approvals and everything. We'd love to come out and meet with you and your communities and see how we can make this program a success into the future. So I think I went way over my time, so I apologize, but I'm here and I'll be on the rest of the day if there are any questions or other discussion.
No, that was excellent, Eddie. This is a very important presentation. We really appreciate your time. I know you would like to be with us here in person, but you had a very noble cause not to be here in person today. I tremendously respect, and I will be looking forward for you to come on one of our next meetings and be here with us as well. But thank you very much for your time. I will ask if there is any question from around the table for Eddie.
Jim Early from Miami-Dade County. Not so much a question, just to say I've been doing this for a long time. I want to credit FDEP for operating and getting out a program which is really I've never seen anything like it. It's really a tremendous amount of resources for local governments. The leadership, the staff, the collaboration, it's a real hallmark. And I just think they need credit for what's happened and keep sending money.
Okay, anybody else? Any question for Eddie? Any special request? I know he put so many office hours there too, so take advantage of all of the resources that are being offered by them. Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'm going to move to our next agenda item. I'm inviting Dave Colangelo, our Resilience Plan Coordinator and Grants Manager with the Resiliency team. He's going to present on our 2023 update to the Sea Level Rise and Flood Resiliency Plan. So this is basically our list of projects that we need to submit to FDP by September 1st every year. And we are excited to share this update with you all today. So Dave.
Thanks, Carolina. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. So I'm going to be presenting the district's 2023 Sea Level Rise and Resiliency Plan, Flood Resiliency Plan. And I'm going to start off with our outline for today. We're going to go over the chapters in the plan. I'll give a little overview of each of the chapters. And then I'm going to focus on some of our implementation projects, some of them that we have grants for. And then I'll go through some next steps. So first, I want to thank our project team, amazing project team. Plan would not be possible without their input, and we have people from all different parts of the district that are contributing to this plan. That's great. I also want to thank our local governments, NGOs, private companies, universities, and private individuals who have contributed to the plan by making public comments on our 2021 and 2022 plans. And we take your comments seriously, and we try to integrate them into our next iteration of the plan. This is just an overview showing the plan has 10 chapters, and I'm going to be giving you a little bit of an overview of each of these chapters. So we start chapter 1 with our resiliency vision, and our vision focuses on risk reduction while reducing risk while maximizing effectiveness. We look at our implementation resources and make sure that we have the proper project planning and management in place in order to implement projects. And we take into consideration future conditions, future changes in population, land development, and climate and sea level rise conditions. We also take vulnerable populations into consideration to ensure community-wide benefits and protection of community lifelines. We engage with the public through resiliency forums like this one, as well as many other outreach activities that are related to specific projects. We also want to reiterate that ecosystem restoration is at the heart of our resiliency vision. Ecosystem restoration projects build resiliency throughout the district's area of operations, and they have the potential also to store carbon and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The vision also includes implementing nature-based solutions. We aim to incorporate nature-based solutions into our gray infrastructure projects to make them more resilient. And we design and construct projects following the latest building codes and energy-efficient designs. And we're also beginning to explore ways to offset new energy demands and existing energy demands with renewable energy projects. So Chapter 2 kind of sets the stage for the rest of the plan. We describe the current challenges and limitations that we're facing, such as population growth, land development, extreme rainfall events, and sea level rise. We also describe our capital improvement plan here in Chapter 2, and how this program feeds into the flood protection level of service program, which I'm going to talk about next. So the flood protection level of service program helps to identify and prioritize long-term infrastructure improvement needs for the purpose of developing and implementation strategy to assure that each basin can maintain its designed level of service. So phase one FPLOS studies include flood vulnerability assessments to identify basin-wide vulnerabilities. Phase 2 look at the modeling comes up with solutions to the vulnerabilities. And phase 3 is essentially the plan that I'm presenting today. And it's the design, permitting, real estate, acquisition, construction of projects. We also introduced our flood impact assessment tool in this chapter. And this tool helps us to support recommendations for flood mitigation and adaptation measures by providing cost benefits of implementing priority infrastructure investments. Chapter 4 is all about nature-based solutions and how we try to incorporate our nature-based solutions into our projects. Nature-based solutions, we look for features that reduce flood risk, and that includes reconnecting floodplains, wetland restoration, innovative stormwater storage technologies, living shorelines, and bioswales, among other things. As I mentioned, we try to integrate our nature-based solutions into our gray infrastructure projects whenever we can, and that means trying to design projects that collect, store, and slow the flow, as well as making sure that we have some kind of green infrastructure within each basin that we work. And this chapter has project recommendations that link into Chapter 9 with the project descriptions. Also mentioned that the nature-based solution chapter outlines a process for implementing nature-based solutions, and there's several steps that you can see here. They're all designed to make sure that we're implementing nature-based solutions that are going to be successful, and we engage our stakeholders along the way to make sure that they're on board with the projects that we're building. And then we also monitor the nature-based solutions after they've been built. And if they are successful, then we look for ways to upscale and transfer to the entire basin or even to the region. And then also we have a process for monitoring our nature-based solutions using performance measures that are predetermined. Chapter 5 is the ecosystem restoration and carbon storage chapter. Ecosystem restoration, as I mentioned before, increases resiliency, and our restoration projects, like all of the Everglades restoration projects, stormwater treatment areas, water conservation areas, and just district lands in general, have the potential to uptake carbon from the atmosphere. And a project was recommended in this chapter this year, and it's a carbon storage monitoring project using two different methods. One is soil accretion monitoring, and the other is carbon flux towers. So soil accretion studies measure the rate and amount of carbon that's stored in sediments over time, and carbon flux towers measure the rate of exchange of greenhouse gases between the atmosphere and the ecosystem below. These studies will help us determine how much carbon is already being stored with our restoration projects on district-owned lands. Chapter 6 is all about our water supply resiliency. We include a water supply vulnerability assessment. And what we're trying to do here is understand and assess vulnerabilities to future conditions. We're building upon already existing water supply plans that protect existing water supplies and looking for ways to develop new water sources. In this chapter, we're focusing on assessing long-term scenarios. Chapter 7 is the energy efficiency and renewable energy chapter, and this has some new information. We're looking to increase energy efficiency in order to offset our existing and new energy demands, and we do that by following energy efficient codes. And also this year we're looking at working on some solar energy project recommendations, and we're working with Florida Power and Light for the potential to have solar arrays built upon lands near the C43 reservoir and the C44 reservoir. And these could be two different things that we're looking at. One would be a large solar farm, 75 megawatt solar farm, that would supply energy to the grid, and it would be built on district lands. So we'd have to work out a situation where that would make sense for us. Also, there's a potential to do smaller, up to 5 megawatt arrays on district lands next to district facilities, and we would just power those directly, and they would be hooked to the grid, and we would use net metering. A couple other pilot projects that we're looking at, potentially a solar canopy here at headquarters. We would have solar panels over part of the parking lot to shade our vehicles and to power EVs as we move to electrical vehicles. And then we want to look at the potential for floating solar. So we're looking at building a floating solar panel array on Lake Freddy, which is right out here. And moving on to Chapter 8, characterizing and ranking our projects. So Eddie mentioned the Resilient Florida criteria for the grants, and this is basically built upon the same tiers, the same criteria that Resilient Florida uses. And the first tier is likelihood of system deficiency, and that refers to flood vulnerabilities. Tier 2 is consequence of system deficiency, and this tier is related to socioeconomic demographics, critical infrastructure affected by flooding, and public water supply and well fields, as well as environmentally protected areas and adaptation action areas. Tier 3 looks at project benefits and system enhancements. It refers to whether the projects contain nature-based features and environmental components, whether they have benefit cost analysis already done, availability of funding sources, whether funds are available, and whether they include innovative technologies. So Tier 4 comes down to our structure inspection program and capital improvement plan. And this is important tier because it takes into consideration the existing state of our infrastructure and also where the projects might lie in our capital improvement plan. So we try to mesh those programs, the resiliency and capital improvement. We end up with a table ranking our projects from most vulnerable to less vulnerable. And we're in the process of working on that this year, still working on that right now. So this isn't a final list by any stretch. What else? We use the ranking to help to prioritize our projects and grant applications. Okay, the meat of the plan is really Chapter 9, and that's our priority implementation projects. We have 23 projects at coastal water control structures that enhance and adapt the structures to work on restoring the original level of service that they were designed to provide, and implement additional regional strategies, including basin-wide storage, flood barriers and levees, conveyance, and nature-based features. There's also 15 other resiliency-related projects that are described in the plan that adapt inland water control structures and levees, restore natural hydro periods, improve communications and automation for flood control, and build coastal resilience with nature-based projects. We also include the renewable energy projects at the end of the chapter. And so I wanted to focus on a few of our projects. This is the C8 Basin Resiliency Project. This is the one in Miami-Dade County that was awarded a FEMA BRIC grant. And basically what we do here is we're replacing the S28 structure with a more robust structure and constructing a storm surge barrier or a flood barrier to withstand sea level rise and climate change impacts. Installing a forward pump station to restore the design level of service at the structure that's been reduced over time because of sea level rise. Enhancing secondary canal banks throughout the basin to improve flood control in the entire basin. Installing, I think this is an interesting part of it, installing this temporary floodwater detention area on a portion of the Miami Shores golf course, which is right next to the S28 structure. And so this area of the golf course, we've worked with the village of Miami Shores to be able to use this portion of the golf course during extreme events, extreme flooding events, where we would temporarily hold floodwaters here while we're waiting for the canal levels to go down. And then also installing living shorelines along the banks of the canal in this area to help with wildlife habitat. So all these, the next couple of projects are similar, and this is the C7 Basin Resiliency project was a FEMA BRIC grant application that we submitted last year, and we should hear something about that probably next month. And again, enhancing the structure, the storm surge barrier, forward pump station, living shoreline, and this is actually not next to the structure. This is further up in the basin, and it's the W.H. Turner High School. We're working with Miami-Dade Public Schools to be able to enhance their property with living shorelines along the canal and a flow-through wetland. Also building some recreational features like kayak launch and having a shaded area for recreation and education. C8 Basin Resiliency Project is also a FEMA BRIC grant application that we submitted last year. Same types of features here. We have the storm surge barrier and forward pump station. In this situation, we looked through the basin and we found a stormwater lake that's in the basin along the canal. And we're going to, if we were to be awarded this funding, we would build a living shoreline along the canal and a stormwater detention area at Pickwick Lake, which is a stormwater detention lake that we would improve, building some recreational features and park amenities as well. And then one of our new projects this year is also in the C9 Basin, in the C9 Canal Enhancement Project. And we received an EPA grant award in partnership with Miami-Dade County, FIU, and Miami Waterkeeper to design 3D renderings and landscape design for this project. So it'll help us with our FEMA BRIC submittal this year. So the flood protection level of service study results recommended widening a portion of the C9 canal in order to enhance conveyance and storage capacity. And when I first started looking at this basin again, I noticed that there was about 150 feet of right-of-way on either side of the C9 canal, which is unusual for such a built-up area. So we started looking at it, and it's most of it is district-owned, and we're looking at the possibility of using these district lands to build it. This is just sort of a little cartoon markup of what a section of the canal would look like if we were to build this project. So you have the canal widening, which is the main flood control feature to enhance conveyance and storage and improve flood protection level service. Then we would design and build a wetland that runs linearly along both banks of the canal to create additional storage, to begin to start to restore floodplain connectivity, increased evapotranspiration in the wetland that can contribute to a reduction in peak flood stage, enhanced water quality, and improving fish and wildlife values. And this is a cross-section of that project. So we would build access roads along both banks of the canal so we can continue to maintain the canal, improving access for operations and maintenance, and potentially using the access roads for recreation purposes. We would construct low water crossings along the access roads in order to connect the wetland with the canal, so you'd have movement of water between the wetland and the canal. And we would also construct nature-based features at secondary canal outfalls in order to improve water quality. So there's about 8 secondary canals that enter the canal along this stretch, and the idea would be to clean that water up before it enters the primary canal. Another project that we were just awarded as part of the Resilient Florida program is coastal structures enhancement and self-preservation mode. And a lot of our coastal structures were in need of optimizing and enhancing their operation during high tide and storm surge events and hurricanes. And that includes enhancing electronic and mechanical components and modifying gates on 20-plus coastal structures. It'll allow water control structures to operate autonomously during extreme events, and that'll reduce upstream flooding risks and protect our water supply against saltwater intrusion. The next project is the Everglades Mangrove Migration Assessment Project, and we have not received funding for this yet, and we hope to soon. This is a demonstration scale pilot study to address Everglades vulnerabilities to sea level rise. And it is another nature-based solution project that increases coastal mangrove elevation, reducing saltwater intrusion, peat collapse, and land loss. So there's a technology called thin layer placement that's used to spread sediments in areas that have become too deep for mangroves to grow. And then the idea is to have the mangroves planted and then grow in, and then to have sediment keep piling up year after year to actually build land. And that'll preserve and enhance the mangroves, build coastal resilience by reducing storm surge damage, and create and enhance wildlife habitat. And if it's successful, it could be transferred to other parts of Florida as well, east and west coast. So I know everybody remembers Hurricane Ian. We had some severe flooding associated with it, and sometimes that when we have an event like that, it really shows you exactly where our biggest issues are, and it did. And this generated several projects. Is this working? Okay. Yeah, so 7 different projects. I'll not name each of them, but each of these projects, we experienced some difficulties in each of these areas, and Hurricane Ian showed us where we need to do enhancements, and so that's another way that projects get into the plan. Chapter 10 is all about our planning studies, and we have many. All the FPLOS work, water supply vulnerability assessments, et cetera. And I wanted to mention that we're always looking for different funding sources. We're looking state, federal, and local for funding sources and partnering with, with all of our local partners. The next steps. So today, the plan is actually already posted on our website. It's being released for public comments, and it'll be open for public comments until June 23rd. And you could submit those to resiliency@sfwmd.gov. July 31st is the deadline for us to incorporate all the public comments into the plan and submit it to DEP by September 1st, and also to the governor's office and legislature by October 1st. And I wanted to remind everybody, if you're interested, to subscribe to our resiliency updates, and you can do that by going to this website, sfwmd.gov news events, and then you can follow the steps here to subscribe for emails. And then whenever we're having an event like this one, you'll get an email the day before, or you'll get an email quite a few weeks before, actually. And that's my presentation for the day. Any questions?
Hi, Nancy Gassman, City of Fort Lauderdale. The plan is really impressive in terms of addressing resilience concerns within the boundaries inside of the salinity control structures. When the City of Fort Lauderdale experienced the 26-inch rain event of April 12th and another 3 inches on April 13th, our biggest challenge was a total lack of capacity in our waterways in order to be able to discharge through our gravity systems. In the meantime, for the South Florida Water Management District structures at G54, S33, and S13 opened on April 11th and continued to discharge until April 20th, which absolutely increased the intensity, duration, and continuation of the flooding within Fort Lauderdale because we could not use our gravity systems to move that 26-inch of water out. As you've reviewed your different projects, they all involve pumping, which creates significant protection of the western communities in Broward County from flooding. But as the receiving water, it creates a burden on the local community to have to switch over to pumping that's being paid for with local dollars. I recognize that you guys have a limitation in terms of what you can control east of your structures, but please be aware that your decisions and your actions as you improve the protection for the western community is at the peril of the eastern communities.
Thank you, Nancy, very much. Let me get this question a little bit. So you're very right. This is the way that we have the operation of the CNSF system today, and Fort Lauderdale is the largest community that we have downstream of the coastal structures on the way the CNSF system is set up today. As you know, the district, water management district, has some certain authority to be able to do that and operate through the protocols that were established to operate the system. We have all the rules determined on the Yellow Book, and this is how we operate the system. And this is how we have been driving even the initial implementation of the FPLOS program. You're right, that's where we focus on the structure that we operate. The good news is that we have been partnering with the Army Corps on the CNSF study, and our really major hope that what we can get out of this study is really a more integrated, coordinated process that we can operate the CNSF system in a way that we extend benefits throughout the region, and we minimize this downstream scenario that we have today. This is only through extensive coordination, additional project ideas, implementation, what we can do with the system, what are the additional features that we need there, and some additional types of authority that will be needed to be able to really resolve issues that we have and really exacerbated issues of flooding with the city of Fort Lauderdale. There is no other city in the CNSF system that is so vulnerable downstream of the structures as we have when we look at Fort Lauderdale. It's a significant portion of land that is downstream today. So we are working, the way we are building the tools for the CNSF system is really to allow us to look at that. There is a very clear recommendation especially when we are working on the federal level and with the authorities given to the Corps, that nothing that is going to be done in any piece of the system can or should exacerbate conditions downstream. This is very clear. If it does, it's part of the process to include mitigation strategies. So I think that's where we really are now, and we are going to be partnering. We have all the communication channels to be able to work with you. You are definitely one of the key stakeholders that will be helping us to solve this issue when we talk about like upstream, downstream, and we really hope to partner with that throughout the study.
So if you consider BEAMFER's request to raise your rate, please keep in mind that we're also having to raise our rate for the local community to enhance our stormwater system because of these confounding factors. And as the Corps and as the Water Management District are considering the improvements, again, that primarily provide protection for the western communities, please consider whether contributions to enhancing the eastern communities' stormwater structures and adding pumps there so that we are not in a situation where we are competing for protection with the western communities.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting to say that it is being recognized that the reliance upon solely discharging east is something that we need to evolve from. We have to look at more and more opportunities to hold water when needed. We have an example of the emergency detention basin at C4 Basin where we can hold water, not just fully rely on discharging east. And we have been looking at the opportunities to also enhance integration and move water north and south as possible. I think the case of the April event is the perfect example that we could and can think of strategies of moving water south and north, and maybe not discharging at Fort Lauderdale, but discharging somewhere northern or southern during events like that. Nope. So.
This is too tall for me. Well, and you've heard me say this before, back 20 years ago when I sat on that dais, we were moving water like we always move water, and now we recognize that we can't move water the same way anymore. And our concerns have always been, and you've heard us repeatedly talk about water quality. So really pleased to see all the nature-based solutions and all the creative ways in which you all are incorporating moving water and cleaning it before discharging it. Although I know they're small pilot projects, I think it would be beneficial for the district to sit down with other communities, particularly urban communities, and continue to work, such as the golf course, for example, and other ways to divert water, because, you know, some nature-based solutions, it's just they're just a small, they're small scale, and we're talking about big scale. And in the urban areas, we're so grown out that we have to get really creative. And so we appreciate DEP's funding of some technologies that we'll be testing in the canals. These 3 canals are probably the most polluted canals next to the Miami River. in Miami, causing annual fish kills in our community, impacting our economy in a very dramatic way. And as you know, Miami-Dade County is one of the largest tax contributors to state government coffers. So I just wanted to put that out there so that we can continue, like Broward County, the South Florida region in particular. So as we continue to work on these, scaling is going to be the big opportunity here.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Hi, Amy Eason with Martin County. Thank you for the resiliency update. I'm looking forward to reviewing it and providing comments.
Great.
But one question I have as we're talking about resiliency and me as an engineer, I typically use the basis of review to help design, stormwater infrastructure using the ERP process. Is those elements that are in the basis of review being updated to include increased rainfall, resiliency elements in there so that us as engineers who are doing private design have those tools to look at? I noticed that you have some additional studies that are going on, but how is like the rainfall going to be updated and other elements within that basis of review so that we're consistent even with developing private developments?
So the answer is yes, we're looking at future conditions. The technical answer, I would ask Carolina to weigh in on.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy, for bringing that. I know you have been providing comments through our cycles and appreciate you participating so actively. So talking about the basis of design and in bringing some additional elements, we work very closely with our CIP program. That's how we bring the projects through implementation and design and move them. So we have been, so one of the paradigms that we have is how can we ensure that we're not going to go to this project twice in the short term. So as we are planning for any of the enhancements, the traditional O&M that we were doing, how we can make sure that we bring those resiliency components. Some of the elements some of the projects that we have in the plan are the ones that are also in the CIP, some are not. Some of CIP projects are not necessarily looking at all those future conditions and all those additional rainfall and all of that. But we have opportunities to work very closely with them to understand if we are addressing a regular O&M need of today, or if you want to be making an investment that we need to kind of build additional components and resilience in the system for a long-term effort. Of course, this all relates to available funding and how much we can do now, but always with the goal, this was actually even coming from the Board Chief of Engineering. We want to be able to not have to go back to the same project twice in a very short time between like enhancements. So yes, we are trying and we are navigating through that as funding is available.
The one thing that I've noticed in design and the things that I've worked with back in 2014 and looking at rainfall and stuff is that it's been a long time since South Florida's updated those rainfall graphs. I think last time in the 80s was the last time they've been updated. So even to bring them to today's conditions and then looking forward, it'd be nice to have, as people are designing these projects, to have that. And I'm sure with your FPLOS program that you've got those rainfall assumptions already put in there, and it'd be nice to be able to utilize that as we're looking at infrastructure moving forward.
And yes, you're right. From a regulatory perspective, the rainfall that we use is from the 80s, 70 to 90, I believe, the period that it was used to calculate the return frequencies. We also use NOAA Atlas 14, depending on where we are as a reference. For planning purposes, which is what you were suggesting and touching on the level of service, we certainly use all the most recent data. We have been building rainfall scenarios as we develop those models to capture every rainfall occurrence and even like bring April 12 event as we are looking at that. Of course, we're not going to model or plan for a 1,000 event, but we just need to recognize what's happening. And we also have developed a future rainfall projections. So the newest level of service programs are now really bringing rainfall intensification as part of future scenarios. So Palm Beach County and Upper Kissimmee Basin have specific scenarios that will be looking at rainfall increase for all the recurrences. So for 5-year, for 25-year, for 100, what does that mean? Where we are, we partner with the USGS on that. And we are now actually very exciting. We are bringing that same approach that we partner with the USGS. The Florida Hub is adopting the same approach and is extending the same methodology, the same databases, the downscale database that we use from climate models to a statewide product. This is coming in the next months. I'm sure they will be coming to one of those forums to talk about that too. But we have products at South Florida level available. We have a portal, a web application that every local government or every local county can go and get the data. I know Broward County updated their frequency based on the results. They will be using 20% increase as part of their resiliency plan next. So yes, it's there. We're getting the word out as much as possible. And the vulnerability assessments from Resilient Florida are requiring us to look at that too. So it's not mandatory, but it's a recommendation to look at rainfall increase. So we all need to move on that direction, certainly.
Good morning, Greg Mouth for Broward County. Of course, we look forward to providing comments. I don't know if you'll be looking forward to receiving them, but, that's kind of where we are. Commissioner First, at this in the beginning, getting big groups together to kind of push and to move projects along. I do have some concerns just off the ranking from this year. If we're picking, the first 2 projects this year, it's over $500 million to get them completed. So that's a significant amount of money to spend, and, that money's we're short on that right now. But if these projects keep moving up and down this list, and we can't all coordinate on picking the top 5 or the top 10 and standing behind them for a prolonged period of time, we're not going to have that opportunity to advocate and to collaborate on getting those things completed. Just looking at the past 3 years since, this has been happening from 2021 to 2023, the top 5 have never been the same ones. So as we change the ranking criteria and we're moving these things around, it almost looks like, what we have been focusing on is no longer of the same importance if we're considering something else. Although conditions aren't getting any better, the conditions are actually worsening. So just the top of my brain, the first comment that I have, I am happy to see the top 2 this year, but last year they were number 6 and number 5 respectively. We've had projects move from like the single digits up to almost the end of the list over the past 3 years as well, in the same way, going back and forth. So, if we're all going to get together, if we're all going to fight for this, if we're all going to collaborate and, move these projects forward, some consistency, I think, is needed. But.
Well, I can say that the ranking changes based upon comments like we got from you last year. So I think that it's improving because we have more information. We're using more criteria to rank the projects. But you're right, it moves around, and it's directly related to the input that we've gotten on how our ranking criteria are scored. Anything else you want to add,
Yeah.
Carolina?
Just quickly to add, from year 1, we didn't have any of the Resilient Florida criteria incorporated. That was the major change. From year 1 to year 2, we really brought the Resilient Florida criteria. We are trying to mimic as much as possible the same percentage and very similar criteria using to rank our projects, so we are aligned with what Resilient Florida will be ranking anyway. So the major difference happened between year 1 and year 2. We are having some projects that are being also fluctuating, as Dave mentioned, because of some of the recommendations that we got from stakeholders. But I think what you saw too, you touched a very important point. We have new components that are being added to the projects. And this was a conversation that we all had as a team on how to better organize those projects in the plan. They're getting bigger. Like if you can see what we had for initially on year 1, it was S28, 27, 29 for the 3 that we are beginning design. And now we have a basin-wide strategy, so it's not just focusing on the structure. We have several components that were added, and the projects are larger. And of course, then you are also ranking them differently because we have those additional components. So a decision was made to group all components within a basin in one project. We might evolve to different formats next year. It's just the way that we're organizing. I think it facilitates for us to understand where we are targeting. That's why we have such a large amount, $500 million on the first 2 projects, but that doesn't mean we're going to go on the route. We have different components, and we're going to be implementing those components as we find funding, number 1, and as we kind of move towards implementation and more urgency in what recommendation is there. If Akin was here, he was going to be able to talk extensively on the adaptation planning path, which is something that is how our projects are built to. We don't need to build the 500 million today. We have to go to, along the way, building resiliency and making sure we can build something that is adaptable. This is challenging, this is not easy. As we go to design and we evolve even deeper on the design of the 4 pumps, we are learning that it's not as easy to be able to be as flexible as we want it to be, but we are trying to understand how we can be evolving and moving those components throughout an adaptive pathway that we can bring new components and enhance resiliency as we reach thresholds of critical conditions in the system. As we have uncertainties in sea level rise, so as we kind of keep seeing those additional acceleration rates or not, we might be able to move the sizing of the projects a little bit. So this is some of the reasons, but you're right, it's evolving. I joke that this is an evolving plan to evolving conditions, so we're all on the same boat trying to navigate here.
I just want to know what projects that we want to push for, and remain consistent with the unified push to do so. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
First of all, very impressed with that whole plan, of seeing the comprehensiveness of it. With all the different capital projects, is the associated cost shown?
Yes.
On all
There's
of this,
cost
okay.
estimates with all the descriptions.
What was it, what's the total?
What is it now, Carolina? It's over, is it close to 3 now?
It's nearly 4 this year.
Nearly 4
3.7, I
billion.
believe, is the last.
Okay.
Is the last.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Jim?
I have to add my compliments, and we also will get our comments in. 2 specific points. One, thank you so much for involving the energy area. You guys made my trip up here worth it.
Great.
We have to find alternative ways of creating energy that has a great rewards, efficiency, and conservation. Land is so expensive in the urban areas that exploring floating solar is just really critical. And you guys, because you own water, are in a key place to help the rest of us see if that's one of the paths forward. So count on us wanting to be a partner on that piece. The second point I'm going to do a terrible job at because I have to speak in core language, which I can't do. So I'm going to throw it on Tim to talk about when he talks about comprehensive benefits. But when I look at the landscape, what's happening, not unexpectedly, because there are a number of core non-federal sponsor projects going on, right? You guys are often the non-federal sponsor. In many cases, the counties are non-federal sponsors for other projects. And I see a lot of common focus, critical facilities. I mean, it's obviously the state's focus. Wonderful new growing focus on nature-based features coming in. You guys you're looking at structures. Other core projects are looking at a different set of structures to protect us from storm surge. I think it's very interesting that the C8 project has storm surge protection built into it, which was never part of the original design of a saltwater intrusion gate. So I've seen a crossover, which is great. Here's the one I hope you can look at as we move forward. Because a lot of those, outside of the structure, a lot of those things, measures, are bundled under what the Corps calls non-structural, which is a little bit of a misnomer because there's plenty of structural activity going on in the non-structural area. But this may go back to the Commissioner's point about funding and the point earlier about where the protection's happening and where it's not. I mean, from the Barrier Island west, everybody's paying taxes. And we could get to the point where this is theoretical, where we're achieving what we've got in the report and we're protecting all these critical facilities, but there's a lot of private property being flooded. And I think when the Corps does non-structural, they have a very important component, which is floodproofing and elevations for private projects. And if we were to get to that point, and that 65-35 cost share, we'd have to come up with a 35% match. And maybe that's a place, maybe it takes legislation, I don't know, but where we could cost share between a county and the district to cost share the non-federal portion of that. And think about it, again, long-term, what we're facing is probably we need to do the flood proofing and we need a buyout program. Now, none of that probably is an easy lift today. But long-term, I think that's where the counties have to come forward with their portion. If we are lucky enough to get 65% federal dollars to do that, we need to have a good partnership. So I like the direction we're going. I like the fact, and Tim will say it better, about how these things are correlated. But that's the piece that we're not focused on, that the Corps presents us an option to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone
I want
else?
to add a comment on that. I really had liked this conversation, and it was interesting because I saw a graph on the Back Bay study in Collier County about a month ago that was the same conversation we were having, but this the way they put it together. It explains a lot of the different paths that we have and why we are calling non-structural on the elevation of properties, which is definitely a structural measure. But it's nice to see how they define, and I will seek to find a copy of that to share with you all. But basically, they talk about reducing the risk. So what is your ability to reduce flood risk, to remove water from the streets, from the communities, which is what they call structural. We have a system in South Florida. It's non-existent in, I would say, nowhere else in that magnitude, which allows us to move water, which allows us to take water away from the communities, so reduce the risk. So that's what is called structural. Everything else that is what is living with the water. So living with the flood is you're going to still have the water there, but you're going to learn how you can adapt elevating properties, flood proofing, to be able to live with the flood. And of course, the solutions will come from a combination of the two things, because we cannot remove the entire risk. But again, I think it's interesting that we need to recognize that we have a system in South Florida that allows us to also reduce the risk, and we need to maximize as much as possible what we can do with that system. It's there, it's in place. I cannot think of any other place that would be able to add a system like that in today's world and all the complexities that we have. So I think this is good. And on the point of, I think just quickly, I know Irela touched on the nature-based solutions, which is another piece that we all need to explore. The more and more we look at that, we also understand that we need to partner with local governments. As you said, we don't have all the land. We don't have big lands. It's going to be a lot of distributed, smaller storage and green solutions around the landscape for us to achieve any more significant goals. So I think we also need to work at that, really evolve from those more like smaller pilot cases to a very like wide, areas where we can implement those, and it will depend on local governments. Yeah, it will depend on local governments. This is beyond our capacity as an agency to implement a lot.
Anybody else? Well, thank you. I think it's time for a short break.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you all. We have a break. We all ask to have a break here and use this time to kind of just also network a little bit. This is why we are here. So we will be back at 10:45. Okay, I think we're live. I can see my voice coming through the mic. I can hear. So let's give just a few more seconds until we are all settled back. The breaks are always short, but it was good to have the chance to catch up and talk to some of you. We need more time. But let's move to the agenda so we don't need to go too late this morning. We have two very important presentations coming up. And I would like to invite the Chief Resilience Officer for Monroe County, that's Rhonda Hagg. She's going to be talking about the Monroe County flood vulnerability assessments, and we are really excited to hear from her. From the Keys? Yes, thank you. Rhonda, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, thank you.
Are you ready?
The floor is yours, yeah.
Okay. So first of all, before I start into my presentation, I want to echo what you've already heard, how incredibly thankful we are to have a great team at the state and federal level. Wes Brooks, of course, has been very helpful. DEP, incredibly helpful with all the programs that they're running and the grant funding. DEM, you're going to hear a little bit about how we also have grants with DEM and DEO here in the Keys. And of course, we couldn't do all that without a really incredibly and talented consultant team. They're the ones actually implementing the work for us, and our municipal team here in the Keys. So you're going to hear a lot of projects that we're doing here in the Keys, but it's not, it's not because of the county, it's because of the incredible team that we have at the federal level, state level, and local level here. And with that, I'm going to move forward. So I'm Rhonda Hagg, Chief Resilience Officer in the Keys, and we're going to talk a little bit today about what we're doing here in the Keys. You see this picture on the right hand there, that's in Key Largo, one of our neighborhoods that now routinely sees levels of water like this on the road almost every year. It gets a little bit deeper and lasts a little bit longer every year as the seas begin to rise. And that's why we've been seeing this, for the last decade, more than a decade, but we've started our research about a decade ago because we could see these effects were occurring more and more frequently on an annual basis. So we needed to really get all of our research underway and completed so that we could get our big capital plan ready for implementation. And that's kind of where we are right now. We're just beginning to implement some really big capital projects. Next slide, please. What we did here was we're using the sea level rise projections from the compact, which is also the NOAA intermediate high. 2025, we're looking at an additional 1.5 inch of sea level rise. By 2045, we're looking at another 12 inches on top of that. That alone is a lot of water right there for the Keys. By 2060, of course, these are a little bit further out. We're looking at another 23 inches on top of that. And then by 2100, a little bit farther out, but we're looking at, 5.5 feet of sea level rise in the next 78 years. That's a lot of water. It's a lot to prepare for. But like I said, even the year 2045 presents a lot of challenges, and that's kind of the year that we use for our road adaptation plan, because a typical road lasts about that long. So a lot of challenges. Next slide. So some of our resilience initiatives here in the Keys, we've been at it now for a decade, but in 2016, go ahead and click, we launched our Green Keys Sustainability Action Plan. That was a 5-year work plan. It's actually spread out now, it's hanging on to 10, with 165 different recommendations. It included things like recommendations for pilot roads project, improve our elevation data of our roads, and do some engineering level analyses, figure out what roads need to be elevated, how high and when. Then we added on that energy and climate element to our comprehensive plan in the same year, 2016. Next. Then what we did, we took a recommendation from our Green Keys plan to do some pilot road elevation plans, and we moved forward with them. And we went ahead with the Sands neighborhood in Big Pine Key and the Twin Lakes neighborhood in Key Largo. And we initiated our design and permitting phase, and we actually completed that in 2020. Our mobile LiDAR elevation, we have many, many hundreds of miles of roads here in the Keys. And when you're looking at a big road adaptation plan, you have to have accurate elevation data. Aerial flown LiDAR data is not accurate enough. It can be off by up to 6 inches. So we went ahead, used our own money to do mobile LiDAR for all the county maintained roadways. We completed that in 2019. That information was used in our road adaptation plan. I'm going to talk about in a minute. And now we're underway with the municipal effort to do the municipal road mobile LiDAR. We're looking at some grants for sea level rise, the Sands Road Big Pine Key again, now we've moved out of the design phase. We're moving ready into the construction phase of our 2 pilot road elevation projects, and we have some grants to fund the construction. For Still Right, we have a grant for the design only, and that's underway right now. Next slide. So some of our related planning efforts is the roads adaptation plan. There's a few slides on this a little bit later, but that was to identify which roads need to be elevated and when and how high. And then it was also to talk about some of our policy implications. Are we going to be able to implement all of our recommendations in the roads adaptation plan? And if we can't, what are we going to do? And how are we going to fund it? It's a couple $2 billion. And yes, we love our grants, but we know grants aren't going to fund everything. And so we have to, counties doing our own thing to look at how to fund those. We're also looking at vulnerability assessment for the non-road assets. So, we did heavy road adaptation plan study, but we have to look at all our other assets like county buildings, our habitat, our other infrastructure. And, we're funding this again through the DEP Resilience Planning Grant. Comprehensive plan, we have a lot going on there. We have the peril of flood amendments to address the state requirements. We're updating our adaptation action areas and other amendments as necessary. Next. And we have a lot of pending grants. Actually, these aren't pending anymore, but they're coming in. Twin Lakes, we're just wrapping up the final federal piece of that grant. The sand subdivision in Big Pine Key, we're wrapping up that also. The regional roads adaptation pairing, we're looking at municipal funding for that. Our natural adaptation areas, and finally the Still Right point. Next slide. These are some of our new resilience planning, thanks to Resilient Florida program. Go ahead. So we're looking at Pigeon Key. For those of you that don't know where Pigeon Key is, when you're on the 7 Mile Bridge heading south to Key West, when you look down to your right, you see that cute little island where the old 7 Mile Bridge comes out to. That's Pigeon Key. It's used as a historical center, an education center, very low line, and we have an active grant now underway to figure out how to make that more resilient for long-term use. And thanks again to Resilient Florida program. And we also have a water management plan update that we're conducting. That's thanks to DEM. So we already had a watershed management plan that we conducted several years ago. And thanks to that, it helped us get our community rating score a really high score. So we're now rated 3. We're not too many, communities that have that good of a rating. When you get that good of a rating, you're able to offer reduced discount to your residents for their flood insurance. So that's why we really want to try to make sure we have to maintain that water management plan, watershed management plan. We have to update it every 5 years. And so we just started that work. Next. We're also underway. We've undergone a vulnerability assessment, or hopefully in our final year now. We have to update it to meet the additional state requirements with the rainfall analyses. Next. We're also looking at, so it's not just people things we want to look at. We also have to look how vulnerable our natural resource habitat is. We have, again, a Resilient Florida funded grant for that to look at how we can ensure that the environment in the Keys remains resilient. I'm just starting that right now. These are all Resilient Florida grants except for the watershed management plan. Next. Go ahead, next. Okay, then we have the Harry Harris Park. So Harry Harris is an oceanfront park in Tavernier. It was really heavy hit when Hurricane Irma hit in 2017. It wasn't be able to use for quite a long time after that. So now we've got a grant to look at how to make the Harry Harris Park more resilient, not just to sea level rise, but to storm surge. We're also looking at improving the overall usability of that park. It's a beautiful oceanfront park, and maybe we're looking at adding some boardwalks and things like that, so that we can increase not just the resilience, but the overall enjoyment. And I'm really excited to talk about our Long Key Living Shoreline and our Duck Key Living Shoreline. These are 2 new projects, our first living shoreline projects. Long Key will protect the county facility there. We have a waste transfer station there. Duck Key is a residential neighborhood. They've had a long time breakwater there. It was severely damaged in Irma. So we're not only going to restore that, but we're going to go ahead and add a living shoreline into that to enhance the environmental features. Next. So I'm also really happy to talk about our municipal team. So several years ago, with all these grant opportunities that became underway, we started meeting routinely with our resilient partners in the Keys. We have 5 municipalities: Key West, Key Colony, Marathon, Layton, and Isla Mirada. And we all started to meet bi-monthly to talk about what we could do to work together to ensure the overall resiliency of the Keys. We're actually meeting weekly now because we have the mobile LiDAR work underway, but this is really a good project. It really helps us work together. We all communicate with each other regularly. We submit grant applications together or they separately. And so now we have this work underway where, go ahead and click next. So right now, each of those cities applied for their own watershed management plans to develop their own and vulnerability assessments. What we decided to do is because the county had already undertaken that work and had gone through that, they transferred the grants that they received, they transferred them to the county. And so the county is now going to undertake the work on behalf of the municipalities. And what that does is that really provides, effectiveness. You make sure the information is all done in the same way, and the end result is all you're comparing apples to apples. So the county is happy to be able to perform in that function to help our municipal partners. We have a mobile LiDAR surveying underway right now. So the county completed ours several years ago. We're now doing that same work for the municipalities so that they can then move into their street elevation planning work. And the mobile LiDAR surveying was funded by the municipalities with local funds, the same as the county was. Next, go ahead, next. And then when we complete the mobile LiDAR, which will be the end of the year, we're going to move into the street elevation planning so that the municipalities will know which of their roads need to be elevated when and what that cost is going to be. And so the reason we're doing all this work together is to ensure, like I said, we have apples to apples comparison in the data that's put together to support these big capital projects. But also, as you're going to see here in the next few slides, we're talking billions of dollars of needs in the Keys. And so when we talk billions of dollars, of course, we're going to reaching out to our elected officials at the state and local level, to our granting partners. So we want to make sure that all the research and data that goes into these big capital infrastructure projects is done in the same way. And that's why the county was happy to coordinate this research type of work to ensure that when we present to the public and our partners that that we can count on that data. Next slide. So now we're going to talk a little bit about our roads adaptation plan that the county just recently completed. And again, it was to talk about what roads are vulnerable, when and how high they need to be elevated. Next. So these are some pictures here of roads. This is what we see now almost every year in October and November, where our roads are, some of these are, you'll see up to 1.5 feet of water on the road for days or weeks at a time. But really in the Keys, you're now seeing more widespread king tide flooding every year. It gets a little farther spread out in the Keys. It's, routinely it's all over the Keys now. It gets a little deeper, it lasts a little longer. And so we needed a roadway vulnerability study because if we don't maintain access, go ahead and click next. If we don't maintain access to our homes and businesses, we're not going to be able to have a resilient Keys. There won't be anybody here to live. So you can't have visitors if you don't have people here to live. And so the purpose of that was to make the Keys more resilient. Next. Was also to help maintain access to homes and businesses. Next. And to help protect our property values. So we have our work cut out in front of us. Next. So when we looked at this, this is what the Keys could look like in the next coming years. By 2035, if those sea level rise projections come forward, we're looking at up to 2 feet of depth of water on the roads. And then you'll see that little yardstick there, how it gets littler and littler as the years go by. By 2045, even if you have elevated homes, actually even in 2035, even if you have elevated homes, the water can be lapping at the, your bottom floor. It can be actually go into the bottom floor. So it's not like the elevated homes are going to be safe. And of course, by 2060, we're looking at a lot of water, even in the bottom floors of elevated homes. And of course, we still have a lot of thousands of ground level homes. That's why it's really important to get this road adaptation study underway. And that's just to, talk about it's to deal with the increased sea level rise. Next. Yep. Okay, next. So when we look at how to elevate our roads, you would think, okay, you got the compact sea level rise projections. You go ahead and look at, the amount of water that's going to be on our road, and you're going to put, you would first think, okay, I'm going to elevate the roads first that are going to see the most water on them. Well, if you do that, we're looking at billions of dollars. If you do that, you might be spending your very limited resources on elevating roads that maybe a lot of people don't live on. So we use this combined rating factor here. We did step 1 and 2. Step 1 was your environmental factors. such as the amount of water on your road, your groundwater clearance. Of course, as the seas rise, we don't have a lot of groundwater clearance in the Keys anymore, so we're not going to have gravity drainage. We're going to have to use pumps, and that means we're going to have to build pump stations to move the water, so we had to include that. And then again, you're looking at your inundation due to storm surge. You're now looking at wave impact, because if you've got higher sea level rise, that's going to be pushing, those waves are going to be pushing against these elevated roads. You have to include your wave impact potential and your existing pavement condition. So then we took those environmental factors, moved it over to the column on the right, the human factors, I call it. Now we start to include things like how many people live on the road. Are there any facilities like police and fire stations on? Are there wetland or natural habitats associated with it? Are there any natural, threatened and endangered species, and are the evacuation routes? And again, we just looked at the neighborhood roads. We didn't include US 1. We all know US 1 is the only road in and out of the Keys, but our study was on the county maintained roads. Next. And so this was the end result. So it's very expensive. So what it did was it looked at year 2025. It's recommending 49 neighborhood areas for adaptation or elevation at a cost of $888 million. So in 3 years, we're supposed to implement that, but that doesn't mean we're gonna adjust the recommendations based on science and engineering. You add another 10 neighborhood areas in by the year 2030. By the year 2035, we're looking at another 10. And then up to the year 2045, remember, we only went up to the year 2045, which isn't that far away. We're looking at another 378. Then in total, we're looking at 1.6 billion. So that's a lot of money. And that's just roads in unincorporated Monroe. Of course, we're underway with that same study now for the municipalities. So we're looking at this 1.6 billion with annual cost of 3 million to operate those pump stations. So we basically, half of our roadways are vulnerable by the year 2045 and going to require these adaptations and elevations in order to maintain access to the homes. Next. So what's the next step? So yes, we have our beautiful plan here for road adaptation, but we know we don't have enough money to pay for it. Monroe County is a small county. Yes, we have a lot of really big needs because we have, sea level rise and a lot of tiny islands. So we're looking at an assessment program to help fund these, whether it's the capital investment or the operations and maintenance. When I talk about assessments for roads, we're not, maybe, it could be $1,000, it could be $50,000 assessment per home, or maybe $100,000. That sounds like an awful high assessment amount when you're looking at $1 million, $2 million values of homes or $3 million values of homes. Maybe a $50,000 or $100,000 is going to be worth it to those residents to pay to ensure, to help maintain the value of their homes and to maintain the long-term access. And so we're looking at, again, I want to thank the state. Last year, we applied for $380 million of road adaptation projects. Our top 3 were the only 3 we were able to provide match for. Those top 3 included one in Key Largo for $30 million, one in the Middle Keys, Conch Key for $7 million, and Big Copper Key in the lower Keys, I believe, was $50 million. You can click one more time, and then one more time. So that in total, our top 3 projects were $86 million, which would include a $43 million match from the county. So these top 3 came out very high on the Resilient Florida plan. We've already been noticed of award for the Conch Key. We're hoping to receive notice of award this summer for the other 2, but again, that's $86 million in grants for $43 million. The county is scrambling to even find the match for that. And that's why we're having to look at all types of sources, because if we only use county funds to provide that match, we would be tapped out. We would be done. We don't have any more capability to come up with any more match. And so, of course, that's not something that we want to be in a position of. So we're looking at alternative sources of funding. Grants, you always have to provide that big match. So we're looking at, like I said, the assessments. We're also looking at a potential extra sales tax, a penny sales tax. We're looking at internal mechanisms to go forward with a referendum on that, because actually the tourists pay the majority of that. We're looking at stormwater utility fees. So anything and everything, we're going to really have to be creative to come up with that money. Next slide. And then finally, our federal partners, they came to town 3 years ago to do a study on how to make the Keys more resilient. We were hoping they were going to do roads, but they said, no, thank you. We don't do roads. They did look at US 1. So this was the Florida Keys Coastal Storm Management study. It's now an approved plan. Go ahead, next slide. So what they did was they looked at US 1 because that's the evacuation route in and out. They also looked at the structures throughout the Keys, including county and municipal infrastructure. So municipalities were also included in this. And they looked at homes and everything else. They did not look at local roads. I want to make that clear, but they looked at pretty well everything else. Next slide. And so the ultimate plan here, the project was a recommendation for US 1 shoreline stabilization, because, you know, US 1 can wash out in a hurricane. And so if we stabilize that, that means that people can get back in faster. Then there was 6 areas of those. There was a recommendation for elevation of homes, 4,600 of them. That's a lot of homes that need to be elevated in the Keys. And then flood proofing of county and municipal infrastructure and commercial properties. So that in total is 2.7 billion. So you already saw the roads was already 2 billion. Now we have another 2.7 billion. So we look at 5 billion. This is 65% federal funding. So we don't, you know, we want to make sure we take advantage of that as much as possible. Then that 35% can be paid by any number of other entities, not just county funds or municipal funds, might be residents. If a resident wants to elevate a personal home, they have a 65% pot of money here to fund it. And, you know, then they might pay the 35%. So we were really lucky here. This plan was just completed a year ago. That then 6 months later in December, this last December, the was approved at the Congress level. And then in January, we actually received appropriations. So we were like just excited to death that we received appropriations. So now we have appropriations and we're underway actually with moving forward with the design and engineering of the US 1 shoreline stabilization areas. We hope to move into the residential and floodproofing in the next few years. Next slide. Some of our environmental resilience projects. Next slide. So we have 2 breakwater repair projects underway. This is through grants from DEO. So these, what we had, these rock walls, they protect the community, the ocean, the waterfront community from storm surge. They were severely damaged in Hurricane Irma, so we applied for grants. So we have 2 underway, one in Tavernier and one in Rock Harbor. We just opened bids yesterday on one and opened the bids today on the other. We're really excited because the bids are actually within budget, which was beyond belief in the Keys because everything is so expensive lately and those budgets were developed, you know, several years ago. So what these will do is once these breakwaters are restored, they'll provide storm surge protection to these homes. And also, I was so excited about it, it's also going to stop the influx of floating sargassum from coming over those rock walls and inundating our canals behind that. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 project. Next. And then finally, we're underway with a lot of canal restoration. For those that you don't know, we have an active canal restoration work plan. We have 96 canals on the state work plan at a cost of $500 million to restore. We get about $5 million a year from DEP. Again, a big shout out to DEP for those funds. It really helps us. We're underway with a lot of canals. We have about 10 or 12 here on scope here for the next year, including backfills. That's where we take a canal that's too deep. We backfill it to about 7 feet. So remember, these canals aren't for conveyance of flooded waters or storm waters. They're for pleasure. And when you have canals that are anything beyond 7 or 8 feet deep, they get too deep for sunlight to reach down to the bottom. You don't get good tidal flushing, and so you don't get your dissolved oxygen levels go lower, are much lower. So what the canal restoration program is about is to restore the levels of dissolved oxygen in these canals so that we can have much better environmental canals. And it also helps with nearshore water quality. And we brought, you know, we just completed 2 backfills. We brought over 1,000 truckloads of fill to backfill a canal in Key Largo, you know, to that 7-foot depth. So we also do organic muck removal. We remove up to 5 feet of muck that's decayed on the bottom of these canals over the decades. We come in and backfill it, and then we put a weed gate on to keep going. Next. So we have a lot underway here. They're all spread all over the Keys, from Big Pine Key to Key Largo. Next. There's just several more here. Again, in Big Pine Key, organic removal. We have to do assessments for these to pay for the weed gates, but the funding of these, the vast majority comes from DEP's program. We do have some restore funds also. And 2 new pilot projects we're really excited about. We're putting injection wells in So many of these we have many projects, we're getting through the $1 or $2 or $3 million cost ones, but there's a lot of them on the list that are like 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million to restore. We're never going to be able to pay for those. They're just really big, long, heavy canals. They need a lot of backfill and things like that. And so that's too much money. We don't ever see us paying that kind of money. So we're looking at alternatives to help improve the canals. So they may not be full restorations, but if we can do things like put injection wells in the back of a canal to help bring back the flow from the front of the canal to the back, it will at least help increase the oxygen levels in those canals and help improve them, if not for a full restoration, at a much lower price. An injection well might cost $100,000 or $200,000. And that, we can install several of those on a canal. So instead of spending 10, 20, 30 million, might be able to spend $1 million and get a big bump in the levels of oxygen. Next, and I think this completes my presentation for today. So again, I want to thank, this is not just a county effort, this is a state effort. Wes Brooks, I want to thank him, and Eddie at DEP, and of course, DEO and DEM, and of course, our consultant team. We're a very tight team in the Keys. We got a lot of projects we work on together that cross over amongst us and the municipalities. And so with that, I want to thank you. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Yes, thank you. Rhonda, this is incredible. Many, many significant projects. We start adding up those numbers, and we are in a very, I would say, needy phase in the whole state for funding to be able to implement those projects. And I think the message is really we need to partner more, understand how we can really have a stronger voice at the national level as well. Any questions? I'll open up for questions from the audience. Yeah.
I have a quick question. Hi, Rhonda, Tirela Bagué.
Hi, Tirela.
I was wondering what the injection wells are for and what you do with them?
The injection wells in the canals?
Yes.
So what we're doing is when you have a canal, they dead end, and then that back end of the canal tends to be the worst part of the canal. It doesn't get a lot of flushing or a lot of, oxygen at that back end of the canal. So what we're doing in these 2 pilot projects, one is in the Eden Pines community in Big Pine Key. When we put the injection well, place it at the back of the canal, and you place it, in the side of the canal, what that does is it slowly just takes water down, and that is anticipated then to bring in flow from the mouth of the canal. So then you get at least some fresh water flowing to the back of the canal as that, injection well, it's just going continuously all the time, and then it'll pull in that freshwater flow and help dissolve the levels of dissolved oxygen in that canal. So these are 2 pilot programs. Isla Mirada just installed one, I think, about 2 months ago. So we have several here going in the Keys, and we're going to monitor the results and see how well they work. And if they do work well, then we're going to probably see a lot of these in our canal restoration program for these bigger, more expensive projects.
Yes, Jim, we have. Oh, anybody else? Okay, Jim is next. No one else has a. Okay, Jim, you can go next.
Hi, Rhonda, Jim Murley.
Hey, Jim.
Somewhat related to all those great projects, by the way, congratulations. After Irma, both our counties applied and received funds for buyout programs. We had real challenges, but I think you guys got further along. Could you just quickly tell us how that's going?
Sure. So first of all, I want to make it clear, the buyouts are not in our Army Corps program. That was included as one of the original task in there, but as they did the benefit cost analysis, they came out. And when they're in the Army Corps program, they were mandatory, and that was something that the county wasn't ready for. So the current buyout program we have is with FEMA funds and state funds that's handed, now managed through our Land Authority program under Christine Hurley. So yes, it's been a long haul. Government moves slow when you have grant funds come in, and we do have a buyout program. What happened when it first got off the road, it was a rough start because the funds, it take a long time for them to come in. And by that time, the people got tired of waiting to sell their houses, and, they sold it to the private market instead. And so we had, it's been some bumps and lumps along the way, but we're slowly working out those details now. We're able to get our program streamlined. We have staff now there working full time on this program. I don't know how many they've done. It's, I don't have those numbers with me because I don't work on that, but it is moving along now. It's getting, up and coming, and we're hopefully that what we're doing now will prepare us for when we get to the level where the Army Corps comes in with their funds and have this, elevation program, not buyout program, but, we hope to keep moving on the buyout programs with the FEMA and state funds. But it's difficult. You have to have staff focused on it, and out there in the community working with them, because you have to help fill out the paperwork and all of that.
Thank you. Any more questions from the audience? I have a question, and I think you touch a point that is something that we are also handling here. You talk about like navigating through the many options for funding, understanding that you have your portions of the match and looking at grants, but you also made a statement on not granting our way out only being the only path. So I wanted just to hear a little bit more, maybe some comments on that as well, on in addition to the tax increases and options that you might have there, what are the other options you are navigating through when you're looking at funding opportunities?
Sure. So we're hoping to match, when we have the state Resilient Florida grants, we're hoping, or the federal grants, we're hoping to use federal funds to help provide some of the match for the state funds. That will really be helpful to the Keys to be able to put 2 matching sources, because that cuts down on the amount of local funds that the county has to put in. So for instance, those top 3 road elevation projects for $83 million, where we have our $43 million match, if we can work and be able to get federal funds to at least provide some of the remaining match of that 50%, that's going to really help us get more road adaptation projects implemented. And the other big thing that's going to really help us is get that second penny sales tax. Nobody likes sales taxes, but it's a new day here in Florida. We have a whole new program, resilience program. You all do. You didn't have a resilience program 10 years ago. You didn't have funding needs like you do for resilience that you do today. So when you have a new program, you have to find ways to fund it. You can either cut things that you're already funding, like our maintenance for roads or our libraries or our parks or things like that. Nobody wants to cut things that you're already doing. You have to maintain your roads you have to maintain your canal structure or whatever. So if you have a whole new program and it's the lifeblood of your future, you have to look at alternative sources. So we're looking at a potential extra penny sales tax that would bring in about $30 million a year. Of course, that's going to help. It's a long way from $2 billion. So other things are going to be those assessments on residents, not just to pay the operations and maintenance, but the capital costs also. And just each and every option that's out there, we're going to really be looking at those.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Ready? No more questions? Okay, I'm looking around and I don't see anybody raising the hand, so thank you very much, Rhonda. Thank you for stepping in also. I know you are very busy, as just by looking at your presentation, we know how much work you have there, and I know it takes time even to prepare and come and present here, but all your insights are available for all the other counties and municipalities, so we really, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move to our last agenda item today. Before we go to the around the tables, we are really happy to invite the Army Corps to come and talk about this comprehensive benefits, and I know the team is going to give some additional updates. So the floor is yours, team. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. Sitting in this forum and hearing about everything that's going on, it gets me really excited just to be part of this overall resiliency effort. And as we've heard, it comes from all levels. It's not one entity at any level that's really responsible for providing that community resiliency in any given area. It's all levels of government really working together, and I think we've heard why that's important, both from a funding level, but also a prioritization of efforts level. Making sure we're all talking and have the ability to come together in forums like this to try to get all on the same page and marching in the same direction is really important as we move forward. So I want to let Colin talk. So I don't want to talk for too long, but I do want to kind of set the table on comprehensive benefits and kind of why those are important and how they play into our projects. And Colin will get into all the details of what that actually means. But bottom line, I think comprehensive benefits really help sell projects. So when we're talking about either authorizing projects or getting funding for projects, once they're already authorized, comprehensive benefits are really important. It's not just about, from an economic perspective, what does this project do, but what are the benefits it has to the region? What are the benefits it has to the environment, to the people that live in a certain area? It's not just all about the dollars. So that's where comprehensive benefits really come into play, is justification of projects. Why are they good? And that comes from the ASA, Mr. Connor's office, as well as Congress. They want to know more about why projects are good, not just the benefit cost ratio. There's more to it than that. So that full story is really important, and comprehensive benefits help us tell that. You've heard us talk at the core level about resiliency, community resiliency, the role we play in that, and the integration of our projects. And part of that really is having our projects talking across borders, if you will. And comprehensive benefits is one of the ways that we would do that. Sharing information both on the metrics that we use in projects, information we're getting from stakeholders, helps to build the comprehensive benefits argument, if you will. And I think another thing that's really exciting about comprehensive benefits is really where the stakeholders, our sponsors, the public can really get involved in justification of projects, because that local knowledge plays into how things are benefiting from a social perspective, from a regional economic development perspective, things that we're not necessarily going to know at the federal level, that the locals can really play a part in justification of projects through comprehensive benefits. So it's really important, and glad we're here today to be able to talk to you about it, and hopefully it will stimulate a lot of questions, because Colin has a lot of answers that he wants to share with everybody. So Colin, if you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you, Tim. Can you all hear me okay? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you for that introduction, Tim. I do appreciate it. And many thanks to the folks there who helped me with the technical issues I was having earlier. So many thanks for that. And Tim, I appreciate you being there in person to represent the Corps of Engineers. So I'm going to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Colin Rawls, and I'm the Section Chief for Socioeconomics at the Jacksonville District Corps of Engineers. And of course, the Jacksonville District, we cover most of Florida, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so, we have a really big area of responsibility that has quite a few projects of great diversity. So a lot of things to think about. So I'm, again, the socioeconomic section chief. Years ago, we used to be called the economic section, and now we have that socio in front of it as part of an acknowledgement that we now have to think about more than just traditional return on investment. And that's related to the subject we're going to talk about today, which is comprehensive benefits. So I think probably most folks in the room and on the Zoom here are familiar with this, at least to some extent, or at the very least have heard some conversation about this. Sometimes it's just colloquially referred to as comp benefits. And it's a pretty broad topic. And I was kind of laughing because I wish I did have all the answers. I certainly am looking forward to question and answers and discussion, but I think it's safe to say that the way we implement this is still evolving, and I certainly do not have all the answers, but I will do my best to try to point us in the right direction, and it really is intended to be collaborative. So with that, I'm just going to kind of jump into it. I'm available for questions as long as, actually, could you go back for 1 minute? Let me just point, oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. So I think those are the 4 P&G accounts, the principles and guidelines accounts that we have to think about when we're evaluating civil works projects from the federal perspective: national economic development, regional economic development, other social effects, and environmental quality. But starting in January of 2021, this comprehensive benefits directive came out, which really fundamentally changes the way that we're supposed to look at and evaluate potential project alternatives. Those 4 accounts have always been there. They've always been part of our planning process. But what I did was actually just put a screenshot from that directive on the right side of your screen there. It really does emphasize the other 3 accounts beyond national economic development more than ever before. It also requires us to consider not just what we would call our national economic development plan, so the one that maximizes economics, economic benefits from the federal perspective, but also considers at least one alternative that maximizes what we would call quote unquote total benefits, and also considers other things, locally preferred plans, and for flood risk management projects, not at least one non-structural plan. So, really interesting hearing from Monroe County a few minutes ago, that you definitely saw some what we call non-structural measures as part of their planning process. And, it's important all over the country. So with that, yeah, you can move to the next slide. And this is just a little image. And really, the only point of this is to note that, again, for many decades, that blue box there, the National Economic Development, was really front and center. And someone like myself, an economist with the Corps of Engineers, almost all of my time and effort would be consumed focusing on that NED account with some effort to the extent possible focused on the other accounts. And it still takes a tremendous amount of effort to evaluate national economic development. It still is a really big part of what we have to do. But now with the comprehensive benefit directives, we really are supposed to fully consider all 4 accounts and bring them into our decision-making process. So next slide, please. Okay, so up until right now, what I've been talking about is fairly conceptual in nature, a little bit high level. But what I'm just trying to do with this slide is to provide some more specific examples of what we mean when we talk about these other accounts. Now, please note that these are just examples. So every Corps of Engineers study, feasibility study, or general reevaluation report, or validation report, whatever kind of study we're working on with our non-federal partners and with our stakeholders, is unique, and not all of these bullet points are going to be relevant to every single project, and then those other bullet points that aren't even on the slide that may be relevant to some. So this is not intended to be some kind of recipe or cookbook. It's just to sort of stimulate ideas and to provide some examples. So I think in the interest of time, I'm not going to really read through all of these, but certainly you can see them up on the screen, and we can share these slides. I would note also that if there's any questions or ideas that come up after today, certainly feel free to reach out to myself or to Tim, and we can have follow-up conversations beyond today. This is an ongoing process, and it's going to continue to be a big priority for us for years to come. While I'm not going to read all of the bullet points, I do kind of want to draw your attention to that OSE, the third column there. Those are things that are important and may or may not be easy to quantify. Quality of life, what exactly does that mean and how do we measure it? So that's where we at the Corps of Engineers do not have all the answers. That's where it's so critically important that forums like this and other opportunities are used to provide perspective from the stakeholders, from the local residents, from everyone who really knows what that means to the people who live there. And so anyway, community resiliency is the same way. When people say resiliency, it can mean different things to different people, and there's different contexts to that. So it's where we just have to work together to try to make sense of it, and if necessary, come up with metrics to measure some of these things. So with that, we'll go to the next slide, and at the end, we can revisit any of these slides if necessary. I know a lot of this is, again, relatively conceptual. So what I'm doing here, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the fact that it's not always possible to measure everything with numbers. I think being an economist, and really honestly being the Corps of Engineers, our preference is always to put numbers on everything. And often that is good. That is what we want to do. It creates transparency. Everyone can look at the numbers, and we can understand why decisions are being made. But the reality is it's just not always possible to put a number on everything. And like the quality of life, I think, is a good example of that. And so this shows kind of a spectrum through which we think about items that might fall into one of those comprehensive benefit categories. So, most probably the thing we're most used to seeing is on the far left of that picture there, the fully quantitative, performance metric or output. So, the example, our bread and butter in the Corps of Engineers is often flood damage reduction. So, alternative one will reduce annual flood damages by X amount. That's quantitative. Often those are monetized, put in dollar formats, but I should note that it's not always monetized. You can have a performance metric, maybe an environmental performance metric, for example, maybe something like salinity, that still can be used in your decision-making process that doesn't necessarily have to, you don't have to put a dollar on it, only when it's appropriate and when as a team we conclude that's necessary. But certainly something like flood damages and if you're doing a navigation project, transportation costs, savings, things like that are certainly monetized. The next category moving along that spectrum there are things that are sort of semi-quantitative. So sometimes we'll do like life safety analyses sometimes falls in this category, where we're hesitant to predict an exact number of, people whose life may be endangered by a particular flood event or something, but we put an order of magnitude on it. So, are we talking, tens, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions? You can do the same thing with dollars, monetized metrics in which there's a lot of uncertainty and you don't really know exactly what the result is, or there's just uncertainty around it, but you can identify kind of an order of magnitude. So that's what we call kind of semi-quantitative metrics. And then moving along the spectrum, you have categorical metrics. So these are things in which you may only be able to capture sort of directional impacts. And the example there is, alternative one has a small positive effect on flood risk in this area, as opposed to the other alternative, which has a significant, a major positive impact. Then maybe one alternative has no effect at all, or negligible, or maybe it has an adverse effect. It has a negative effect, but we just, due to data limitations, time and budget limitations, or just uncertainty in the data, we can't put a precise number on it. And what we're supposed to do is just acknowledge that. And then finally, moving along that spectrum, eventually you end up at sometimes you have something that's just fully qualitative in nature, where you kind of tell a story, you get the perspectives of the community, you write it up, you explain it in words and maybe pictures, maybe maps, but you can't necessarily really put numbers on it. And that's okay sometimes. Sometimes that's what we need to do. So I do want to emphasize that while we, and certainly the economists, are used to the focusing on those quantitative metrics, and it does take a lot of our time and effort to develop those quantitative metrics like net economic benefits. This is not to imply that the level of quantification is commensurate with the importance of the metric, right? So just because something isn't fully monetized or isn't fully quantified doesn't mean it's not important. It still may be very important. In some cases, like again with the life loss or life safety example, it may actually be the most important that drives our decision. So this is just how we measure and how we think about it. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Okay, so I think it's only fair to be very upfront and acknowledge all of the challenges and limitations that came along with this comprehensive benefits guidance. While I think a lot of our stakeholders appreciated the comprehensive benefits directive and thought it was a good idea, for those of us sort of doing these studies, it presented some real challenges, because that directive, it said you shall do this, but it did not come with additional time for our feasibility studies or any other kind of study. It did not come with additional money. The budgets were not increased. It did not come with any additional tools, models, other tools, data sets. It did not really come with anything tangible to help us implement it. And then finally, it did not actually come with specific implementation guidance. And what that means is, the Corps of Engineers will often come up with a directive like that, or come up with a new policy, but then our headquarters in Washington will write a very specific set of implementation guidance that says this is how you do it. This is how you measure coastal storm risk management. This diagram and this manual here describes how you estimate transportation cost savings. The comprehensive benefit directives did not come with any of that, and so that as you might imagine creates some challenges. And so the implications of those challenges are that there was quite a few implications, but two I wanted to really emphasize. Number one, scoping out the study is more important than ever. So it's of course always been the case, and always will be the case, that when we do a civil works study of any kind, it's important to scope it properly, figure out the schedule, the budget, and figure out the scope of work. But even more so than in the past, we really need to pin down those metrics and our approach earlier rather than later in order to have success, and coordinate that with our decision makers earlier rather than later. And then this last bullet point is very specific to the Corps of Engineers, so not necessarily relevant to everything that's probably discussed today. But if you are doing a Corps of Engineers feasibility study, you have to follow these preset what they call milestone meetings. And the first one is called the alternatives milestone. And the comprehensive benefits really, it means that first milestone is more important than ever. We really early on in the study need to make some decisions about what we're going to measure and how we're going to measure it, and brief that at the alternatives milestone, to the extent possible. So that's the intent there. Moving on, I'm almost done, and then we can have hopefully a good amount of time for discussion and questions. I think there's one or two more slides. Oh, actually, well, sorry, there's a few more slides, but we don't have to spend much time on them. So I did want to give a few specific examples. And the first one is the Indian River Lagoon South Post-Authorization Change Report, which was approved by Congress last year and went into WRDA 2022. So basically, just to be quite frank, so the intent of the Post-Authorization Change Report was that the cost of this civil works project had increased dramatically from the original authorization. And it had exceeded what's called the 902 limit. That's basically the congressionally mandated cost limit. It's based on language in WRDA 1986, actually. And the 902 limit is the hard limit. We cannot spend more money on any given civil works project, and that limit is unique to every project. So Indian River Lagoon South, being a big, ambitious, complex ecosystem restoration project, exceeded that limit, and so we had to go back to Congress to get authorization to spend that money. And the post-authorization change report, the PACR, was the vehicle through which we did that. Well, to be honest, our headquarters was not overly impressed with that report, and essentially what happened was they went ahead and approved it and sent it on to Congress, but it was approved contingent on us providing more information about the other benefits. So they said, we're going to go ahead and get it into WRDA 2022, but over the next year and a half, or certainly 2 years, your team needs to provide more information about the comprehensive benefits. So not just ecosystem benefits, which is what the IRL South documents mainly focus on, but regional economic development, national economic development, and other social effects. We have to document that and explain it. And so that effort is underway right now, and we're working on that. But it was a pretty dramatic example where the PAC report almost failed. It almost didn't get to Congress because headquarters didn't think we had enough information about comp benefits. So that was, anyway, a high stakes example. Next slide. This is an example from one of our coastal storm risk management studies that's underway right now in Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico Coastal Feasibility Study. And it's just two interesting parts of that. The first one is this area in the San Juan metropolitan area of Puerto Rico called Ocean Park. And in this area, we have a benefit cost ratio of our proposed civil works project that exceeds unity, exceeds 1 to 1. So you get more benefits than the cost. And so therefore, I don't want to say it's an easy slam dunk, because nothing in civil works is ever easy. But this one is a little bit more straightforward to make the case that, yeah, we're going to reduce more damages and we're going to incur in costs. So please build this project. We're going to provide damage reduction benefits to people all over this area of the city. But the next part of the project, which is a geographically separable element. So the next slide, please. Is the area of the town of Rincon, which is on the western side of the island. And in this case, all the alternative, it's very costly. There's some real implementation challenges to building a project at that location, or to moving sand, or to build, to do any project at that location is just very costly. And as a result, the benefit cost ratio for all the alternatives we evaluated was less than 1. Therefore, for us to recommend a project in that location, we really have to emphasize those comprehensive benefits and make the case to a potentially skeptical audience that, okay, yeah, your return on investment from a traditional standpoint is not all that great, but there's all these other benefits that we can generate and to get there. So what's happening right now is the Jacksonville District is coordinating closely with our non-federal sponsor, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and with the community, with the stakeholders, and with the people of the community who live there. We have some meetings in Puerto Rico coming up soon here to help move this forward and make sure we come up with a plan and a project that that we can all all agree with. So anyway, it's been a challenge, and that's happening right now. So this is current events from our perspective. Okay, I think next slide. I think that may actually be okay. This is the last slide that I have for everyone today. This just shows the some key takeaways. Number one, this is a requirement. This comprehensive benefits directive is not a nice to have or something that we can take it or leave it. For those of us with the Corps, and someone in my position, it's a requirement. We have to do it. Number two, the economists who are working these studies are very well prepared and well trained to do extensive, detailed, and complex NED evaluations. We have certified tools, we have good data sets, we have policies, procedures, and training classes to help us do the NED part. Unfortunately, our capabilities and our experience is much less with those other accounts, and that's where we really depend on help and collaboration with all of you, with everyone that's part of this process. We need help to do that, to implement that. And when it comes to implementation, the bullet point 3, as I mentioned, we don't actually have specific implementation guidance. Each study and each team kind of has to figure it out on the fly. Our headquarters might not like me framing it that way, but that's the reality. I mean, we don't have a cookbook that explains how to do this. We have to figure it out on a case-by-case basis. Therefore, close coordination is more important than ever. We need to talk early and often with our decision makers and say, look, this is kind of an unconventional situation. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And if we coordinate that ahead of time, theoretically, we can really ease the burden on all of us later in the process when we're trying to get a project approved and ultimately go to Congress. And then finally, of course, this is always the case, even more so now than ever, successful implementation of this comprehensive benefits requires very close coordination and collaboration with our non-federal sponsors and with the communities, with the stakeholders, et cetera. So with that, I'm going to pause. Those are the only slides I have, and I'm sorry for I kind of ran through them pretty quick, but I think I'm more interested in giving everyone an opportunity to discuss this. And so with that, I'm going to pause and open the floor to questions or conversation. Over.
Great. Thank you very much, Colin. It was great having you. Very informative presentation. I do have questions, but I'm going to open up for the audience first. If anybody have? Anybody? I have. Okay, let's go. Jim is going to be the first.
Dade County is never without a question. Actually, I got a text, Colin, from my staff back in Miami-Dade, said that's the best presentation on comprehensive benefits they've ever had. And now they're beginning to understand it, which is a little scary.
Okay, great.
But to add to this never-ending set of numbers and things you guys have to be guided by, and now we have to understand how you're being guided. Section 8106 of 24 WRDA, 10 points that somehow come into this discussion. Any initial, I know there's no written guidance out, so is there any initial sense from Jacksonville how this fits into the what the the non-federal sponsors and Jacksonville is doing on different projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as is probably going to be the case with every single one of the questions today, I may not have a fully satisfying answer, but what I can say is that I'd like to think about this to the extent we can, as I keep talking about how challenging it is, and it is challenging, but I like to think about it as kind of an opportunity as well, because what it means is it does give us more flexibility in our studies than we used to have. And I think that example from Puerto Rico is a good one. And that study's not quite finished yet, but as soon as it's released to the public, we can have more specific examples and conversations about what exactly we're proposing. But it's still sort of underway with our collaboration. But that's a case where in the past, we would not have even considered recommending that civil works project in Rincon. The benefit cost ratio is less than 1, you're done. That's it. You're out of here. So, but in this case, we say, yeah, okay, you're from an NED standpoint, sure, the cost is high, but there's all these other things to think about. Community resiliency. So, just for example, one of the non-monetized metrics that we are using in that study is the number of catastrophic relocations. And what that means is, without project condition, if we take no action, quite a few of those homes and businesses on that shoreline are likely to be destroyed in a major storm sometime over the next 50 years. Now, we don't know when and where. Our models try to provide insight on that, but the reality is we don't know. It depends on when the next big hurricane comes, et cetera. But you have erosion and you have storm damage. And so but what we're saying is if we can prevent a large portion of that or reduce the likelihood of that happening. And so, for each catastrophic relocation that we prevent, you're talking about a family or business owner who doesn't have to look at a destroyed home or a destroyed business, And so there's other social effects to that, and there's regional or local economic effects to that. And we have an opportunity in this study for the comprehensive guidance to spend more time and effort on that than we would have in the past. It's the same in Florida. I mean, in addition to the direct damages, which would go into that NED account, we can think about things like, business closures. We can think about things like community identity, something where you have an area, maybe a beach or maybe a recreational area that's important to the community that if we don't protect, it's going to be lost forever. And we can really emphasize. So I can't fully answer your question because I think all of this is underway and sort of in development, but it really is an opportunity for us to think creatively and to think collaboratively about the unique characteristics of each study and bring them all the way to Washington.
And Colin, I'll add on to that. So 8106 is kind of a new way of looking at things. A lot of times projects are flood risk management or coastal storm risk management, but it really kind of acknowledges the fact that a lot of, especially in coastal areas, it's total water level. It's not just storm surge or sea level or inland flooding. It may be a combination of both of those things. So I think 8106 is an opportunity to change the scope of the study, to really focus on that total water level and all those pieces of flooding, right? I think where that may differ a little bit from comprehensive benefits is if your objective and your scope is focused on features that would prevent or reduce risk from all those sources, as opposed to a feature that has a primary purpose that has benefits to those other areas. So I think there's a slight nuance there, and it has to do with the scope of the study, and which looking at all of that may make the scope bigger. Whereas in comprehensive benefits, it may be just helping to justify something based on additional benefits that you could get. So I think that's the nuance, at least the way I read it. And as Colin said, that's really new, and we haven't gotten any kind of implementation guidance yet from headquarters on exactly how that will play out as we move forward. But it's definitely a new way of looking at things, which I think is really good, because everybody sitting in here that lives in a coastal area understands that total water level is really something that needs to be a focus of a lot of our efforts.
I think the storm surge barrier that you saw in that slide, which is not a storm surge barrier, it's really like another flood barrier, but I think that's the perfect example of where we are on the discussion of A106. Talking to the PCX, we got the feedback from them saying with the flood risk management study, we could not be talking about adding features to the structure that would be preventing coastal surge because this is not a coastal surge study. It was the very first feedback we got. Once we start discussing about total water level, and we start discussing about the many drivers of flooding there, and we talk about how we presented that as part of the Back Bay studies, one more layer of protection, that's what we have been discussing, then it was a little bit, I cannot say better accepted, but anyway, I'm hoping it was better accepted. But it's exactly the discussion on the 8106, like, yeah.
To add to that point, as Colin mentioned and as Carolina mentioned, there's a lot of new ways to look at things from a core perspective across the country, and it's taking time to get everybody on the same page and make sure we're all looking at things from a similar perspective. So that's just part of the process, is talking through these issues as they arise on projects and getting to a consensus on what they actually mean. So that's a little bit of internal turmoil that we're all going through at all levels, just trying to make sure we get on the same page with all the new guidance and focus that we've got, which I think is a good thing in the long run, but may take a little bit of time to work through on some of the projects that we're working on right now.
Luis, yeah?
Get this thing to work. Is the comprehensive benefits approach something that's being explored, used by other federal agencies?
And Colin, you may have a perspective on this. I don't know from other agencies what their requirements are from a planning perspective on their projects. I would hope so, because I think it's a really good way to look at things, because it looks just beyond the economics as to what the benefits really are to a community. And I don't know, Colin, if you have any insight into that from other agencies.
Well, not much. I will say that, I mean, it's a good question, and I would agree with you, Tim. I hope so. My understanding is that, I mean, the directive itself, the 2021 benefits directive, that is specific to the Corps of Engineers. That's a Corps of Engineers policy. So I think at the most, on paper at least, it only directly applies to us, but it's certainly the case that the federal government in general and the current administration in particular is heavily emphasizing a more kind of holistic view of potential projects across the board. And I can give at least one example of that, which is the environmental justice, EJ, which is, there was a time in which, at least from my perspective, that was implemented. Technically, the EPA is the responsible agency for implementing environmental justice per the executive order that was signed in the 1990s. But it's always affected the Corps of Engineers planning process. But early on in my career, that was often looked at as more sort of a do no harm type of thing, where if you've identified an environmental justice community, a disadvantaged community, just make sure they don't have any quote unquote disproportionate impact. They're not being harmed disproportionately by the project. And that's still certainly the case. We certainly want to do no harm. But in addition to that, there's kind of a positive implication now, where not only we're trying not to harm disadvantaged communities, we actually are compelled to help them and possibly even prioritize those communities over other communities. And so at the risk of getting into the weeds here, I can, a really specific part of that is, traditional Corps of Engineers economic analysis tends to generate a lot of benefits in high economically valuable areas. So for instance, you have a beach project, you have multi-million-dollar homes that are subject to damage. Well, your economic damages are going to be very, very high at those locations. So therefore, that may look really good from a benefit cost ratio standpoint. But disadvantaged areas with lower home values may not, the models may not show as much economic damage, at least in terms of dollars. And so that might get deprioritized in our sort of traditional approach. Whereas environmental justice gives us a framework through which to think more broadly about that. And there is something called EJ40, which it's not so much specific, at least as I understand it, to like Corps of Engineers Civil Works project. I think it applies to like water quality, efforts, things that affect water quality, and certain other categories are directly required to follow that. But basically what EJ40 says is at least 40% of the benefits of certain types of projects have to accrue to these disadvantaged communities. So I'll try to get more information about what that applies to. I don't think we're bound by that. I don't think we're bound by EJ40, but I do think it's been emphasized as a way to think about it. Like, look, we really need to be prioritizing these communities that perhaps in the past we didn't pay enough attention to, or we ignored, or in some cases, honestly, maybe we harmed. And I mean over the last 200 years. So, that's, anyway, so yeah, there's no doubt that this way of thinking about things is across the government. But I think the comp benefits specifically is a USAID's policy.
One example too that I was thinking while Colin was talking was the FEMA toolkit. When they do the BCA, you do the BCA very similarly to an AD account, so for damages, but they have added new modules now to account for benefits coming from environmental benefits that you can come from nature-based solutions. So there is a new module on the tool, and they also allow you to provide a cost benefit that is lower than 1 if you are an disadvantaged community. So I think it's evolving everywhere. Any questions? I have one. I had three, but I'm going to condense to one because we are running out of time, and we can talk later, Colleen. But my question was related to how do you, so I think you presented a very good point. We are in the scoping, there is a guidance, there is a lot of requirements, and at the same time, we hear the pushback from PCX, from all the internal reviewers, when we are proposing tools to measure those benefits. So in the current scope that we have for the 216, we propose the regional model to help us measure some of those additional benefits that we want to be able to capture as part of this study. And I think it's evident that if we want to talk about other benefits, we might need other tools that will help us to get to the more measurable level. And then we just got reviewers' comments yesterday saying that there are too many models and too many tools in the study, which is like frustrating because we are kind of trying to navigate on this path. And the question is more like, how do we feel, if not on the modeling round, what else can we do in terms of quantifying those benefits and bringing them to the study in a way that we have an efficient scope or something like that so we can make everybody happy, which is impossible, but anyway.
Oh gosh, thank you, Carolina, for asking that question, and because it is very, very frustrating. I mean, it's been, yeah, we were getting contradictory guidance from our leadership sometimes in our headquarters, where exactly like you said, there was a desire and a need and a strong urgency for doing all of this new stuff, all this cool, innovative, analysis and all these other benefits. But then at the same token, there was a lot of pressure on the teams to keep the schedule and budget under control. Oh, you guys are spending too much money. You're using too many models. This is too complicated. People won't be able to understand what we're doing. So we hear both of those things all the time. And at least I can only speak for myself. I certainly have not been successful at reconciling those two things so far, but we're working on it. And so what we can do, though, is there are some things we can do. So, for example, you said the RSM tool provides great data and information about where the water is, how it's moving, why it's moving. And what we can do is, if there's not an appetite for a fully quantified Monte Carlo simulation model for one of these other accounts, what we can sometimes do is just take the outputs from those models that we already have and use them to inform some of the other benefits. Like for example, if you have water on the roads, right, and the potential for disrupting traffic on like a major road, and the model tells us when and where that flooding is likely to happen. That's not necessarily considered a national economic development impact. That's not something that's necessarily in the federal interest, but it's very important locally and to the regional economy. And so what we can do is literally in a spreadsheet, we can work with our partners at the Department of Transportation, get a sense of how often the road would get flooded and how much traffic usually utilizes that road, and we have vehicle operating costs and things like that. And so we could basically do it in a spreadsheet without rolling out some new sophisticated modeling effort and say, look, we think this is going to cause X amount of traffic disruption, and it's going to inflict this much additional cost, logistical cost on the community, and then we can reduce that or prevent it with our project. So that's just one very specific example. But what I'm saying is there are some opportunities to to do things outside of modeling world using just spreadsheets or using existing data. The Miami-Dade, another quick example, feasibility study, the coastal storm risk management feasibility study, the one that's more in South Beach and on the coastal side. So not the Back Bay study, but the actual beach side. That study was eventually approved. I believe it went into Word of 2022. And one of the things we did on that study was we looked at tourism impacts. The fact that Miami Beach really generates a lot of revenue locally and nationally from the perspective of international tourism, and it's under the purview of what the Corps calls lost income, which is not something we normally do. We almost never have the time or budget to chase that down, but we actually did attempt to quantify that on that particular study. But the point is, we had to make a case for it early. We had to say, look, Miami Beach is a really unique resource. It has way more international tourism than most beaches do, and it's kind of a well-known destination globally. And so, we had to make that case early on, and we had to have numerous meetings with our headquarters, and finally said, okay, all right, we'll let you consider that. We'll let you bring that into your decision process. And we the same happened with, I don't know much about this one, but Louisiana Coastal was one where they looked at petroleum impacts of the petroleum infrastructure, and they said this is so important to the national economy that it's not something we would normally chase down. We wouldn't normally spend a lot of effort on this, but we need to for the Louisiana Coastal. And so my understanding is they did bring that into that analysis. So anyway, those are just two kind of all over the place examples. But my main point is that if we run out of time, we can't get any more money for our study. There may be some creative approaches we can apply using the models we already have to make the case for other social effects or regional economic development.
Well, I was just going to echo some of the comments that Jim made about explaining things more clearly. But I know the limitations with regards to schedule, but not every project, is the same. Like, different projects are different and have different things that pop up, different benefits that pop up that are important to add to additional modeling is needed to add and include those benefits. And, and I'm talking particularly about BBC and SERP, when we only get one shot at, working through some of this work, and we're limited by a schedule. And we can't just rush through things when we've been working on a project for 20 years. So I'm putting this out there because we appreciate the flexibility and extra time where we can provide it, so that we don't lose, pun intended, any water. We don't leave any water on the table. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to look at each project individually and separately, because they're going to have different benefits.
Absolutely. That is a great point. I cannot emphasize that or agree with that enough, because you're exact. I mean, yeah, every project is unique, and every environment has unique things, and every community has unique issues, challenges, and opportunities. I mean, it really is, there is not a cookie cutter solution to this. And so what I would just say is I recognize the fact that this presentation that I just gave is essentially just an introduction. I mean, we haven't really resolved anything, but it hopefully stirs some conversation and some thoughts. And the reality is we have to iron out the details on each and every study, and those not really easy. We just kind of have to invest the time to figure it out. That being said, I'd be more than happy to have further conversations at any time. You can reach out to myself or go through Tim if you would like, or whatever. And we understand that more conversation is needed, more conversation is warranted, and some of the best, most creative ideas don't come from us, don't come from the Corps, but they actually come from the stakeholders, from all of our non-federal partners and other federal agencies as well. So in any case, yeah, more to come, but we certainly, I certainly would strongly agree that there's just not a one-size-fits-all solution to civil works.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think that the fact that there is no guidance can be a good thing and a bad thing. The fact that we can be creative is a good thing. And I think the more stakeholder involvement and the more feedback that we get on the things that are important besides just flood risk reduction or whatever the focus of a project may be, understanding those other benefits and the other things that are extremely important to the local stakeholders is really helpful in justifying additional time and budget on projects. And I would say, to your point, Narella, that as projects are progressing, it's really important to hear back from stakeholders if things are moving too fast or not being considered. That feedback goes a long way into justifying slowing down, getting more time. Oh, I know you get that. So yeah. So I think it works. That's kind of the takeaway. Involvement from not just the non-federal sponsors, but from all the stakeholders that are getting benefits from the projects is really important throughout the entire process, that you stay involved and be vocal. Don't think that somebody else is going to address your issue. Bring it up, because we want to hear it and we will listen. Whether we're always given leeway to incorporate everything we're hearing in our projects, at least we want to be able to hear it and acknowledge it and say, that's really important. Here's why we can or cannot incorporate it. I think that's, from our perspective, we owe everybody listening and providing feedback on how we can incorporate what you're telling us into the projects.
Okay, that was great. Great discussion. Very significant point that we need to continue engaging and having conversations in the region. Thank you very much, Colin, for being with us today, and the great presentation. Very informative examples. It was great.
Thank you so much. And again, many thanks to those who helped me out get in the webinar here. So yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity and look forward to further collaboration because it's only going to get harder and we have a lot of work to do. So thank you all so much for the opportunity. Over.
Okay, let's move then to our last session of the day. I invite anybody in the back, if you have any comments, just raise your hand too. We're going to go around the table to give the opportunity to all the participants here to give us updates on resiliency related efforts. And I always start from the right. I know Tim already gave a few from the Army Corps. If you want to give any other additional update, feel free to, and then we move.
No, and I think you already touched on where we are with the flood resiliency study. We're at that first milestone, the AMN that Colin mentioned, and trying to work through justification of the scope and budget with our vertical team. So that's a big part of it, as Colin mentioned. We've got to coordinate that and get everybody's buy-in. So that's where we are with that, which is why it hasn't moved as fast as I think we would like it to. But maybe that's a good thing, because I know everybody's swamped with all the other work going on, so additional time to focus on other things may not be such a bad thing. But so that's where we are on that. If you do have any questions specifically on that project, please let me know.
Well, I'll start, and we can tag team, Jim. Well, you saw some of the projects that we're already partnering with the district on with regards to our canals and water quality. We're also developing a reasonable assurance plan, working with all of our 34 municipalities across the watershed, which is no easy feat. And we thank DEP for their support throughout the process. It's going to take a while, but we're going to get there. And so the district is an essential partner and stakeholder in that process. We're also implementing many of the projects from the Biscayne Bay Water Quality Grant Program, so we're very grateful for that kind of funding that we keep receiving from the state. And I think we have, 6 projects working with the Corps right now in Miami-Dade County. I think there's no other county in the country that has more Corps projects than we do. And I'll kick it over to Jim to provide input on that.
Yeah, I think it's a beneficial challenge when you have the opportunity to evaluate the various projects that are authorized at different times and meld them into the things that are important to the county as the projects are. And I think we covered a lot of them, especially that last presentation. I would go back and refocus on this whole concept of what the measure that the Corps is looking at, and I'm sure we have to evaluate the benefits of what's called non-structural. I think you saw in the slide that came up from Monroe County, which is a county with 75,000 residents, right? It's a small county compared, there are smaller ones, and they're looking at thousands of homes, private homes and commercial establishments being in that program. If you scale that, just going up, and there are 3 coastal storm risk management studies going on at different levels, one in Collier, one in Monroe, and one in Dade, and presumably they could move, up and down the coast. St. Augustine just started one. And so we could have thousands of homes in this mode, and I'm not exactly sure how we do it. So that's why I said earlier, because it's involving the private sector, private homeowners, and not critical facilities owned by one of our governments. So that, I think, it's a great opportunity, but something we need to think about at the scale we're putting it down on paper. So I think that'd be the one thing. But we appreciate the coordination we're getting on these multiple projects, 2 districts, 2 divisions. We're getting to know the Corps really well. And I think I think good guidance is coming from the Assistant Secretary's office. So we're lucky to have that, and we should reinforce it if you happen to see him. I think there actually is the task force meeting next Thursday, yeah. So That's it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jerry Clairday. I'm Palm Beach County Division of Emergency Management. I'm the new LMS CRS coordinator, so I did not prepare any updates as I'm getting my sea legs on my new position. But I did want to congratulate Monroe County on their classification on their CRS. 3 is fantastic.
Woohoo!
Jamie Morales, Public Works, San Lucie County. I do commemorate the district and the Corps for the collaboration and the projects that we have in the area. As each county looks at the future and how we implement these programs, it fortifies what we're trying to accomplish in this team. Nevertheless, I'm always wanting to be cautious of how these projects are fully implemented and the outscale impact it may have with downstreams on other areas. So just be mindful when we're developing these projects to incorporate these areas and have their input on these regions and how they impact these locations and the outcomes of the project. Right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. This is Caitlin Newcamp with Audubon, Florida. So I just wanted to say we appreciate all of the collaboration. So we appreciate all the presentations so far and all the updates from all the local municipalities. This is more of a public comment because I'm not obviously a local municipality, but we just wanted to say it's really an exciting time as we are a state leader in resilience, and we look forward to reviewing the new resilience plan. We see that the district has come a long way from 3 years ago, especially with the added emphasis on collaboration with other state agencies. And we see this as crucial to reducing flood vulnerability while preventing duplicative efforts, especially in light of the DOT releasing their resilience plan this week as well. And we also agree that many areas would benefit from watershed or basin level vulnerability assessments, including high-resolution modeling. Given the impacts from last year's storms and the comments we heard at the previous forums, we recommend that the district supplement its existing priorities to include some of the upper regions of its jurisdiction, as most projects are still in the lower East Coast, but we are very happy to see the addition of the Kissimmee Basin Flood Study. And I would also just echo Broward County's comments earlier. As we move forward with consistency, I think it'll be helpful for us to be able to advocate for the right projects. And I'm sure as we keep moving forward, it will become clear, what the priorities are with time. And then finally, we want to emphasize that inland projects contribute to coastal storm risk management and that overall watershed health creates resiliency. So we believe that including more of the northern basin as well as looking at watershed level projects through a holistic approach, which I think this update is striving to do that. These will not only bolster the entire system's protection against future damaging impacts of storms, but it will also even improve the effectiveness of our Everglades restoration projects. So thank you for your leadership and your collaboration, and we look forward to reviewing the new update. Thanks.
Nancy Gassman, City of Fort Lauderdale. The city is expecting to spend something in the range of $1.2 billion over the next 5 years, investing in a variety of infrastructure, whether it's wastewater, water, or stormwater infrastructure, all incorporating the critical issues associated with climate change impacts, whether that's rising groundwater tables, sea level rise, or extreme rainfall. We currently are moving forward with $200 million in stormwater improvements in 7 neighborhoods. The impacts of the April 12th event highlighted that we had chosen the right neighborhoods for those investments, but we were about halfway through construction in two of those neighborhoods. It includes moving from just 4 pump stations throughout the city to eventually having 12 pump stations throughout the city, recognizing that gravity continues to be a way that is no longer applicable for a lot of drainage in our coastal communities. We're moving forward with a watershed management plan to improve our CRS rating, as mentioned in the keys. We've got both a vulnerability assessment and a net zero plan currently being bid out. And we are working forward on the additional stormwater master plan projects using Florida Resilient funding, using some community block grant funding from the state as well. And we've also been raising a number of seawalls throughout the city. This next upcoming period, we'll be putting in some new seawalls along the Las Olas Boulevard corridor, which is one of our evacuation routes. And I really recognize how amazing the work that's been done in the Keys is. We are, throughout the city, trying to work through truly understanding what our road vulnerability is, and that will be one of the next phases for us to work on in terms of our vulnerability as well.
Hi, I'm Libby Pigman. I'm the External Affairs Director for South Florida Water Management District. My team was formerly known as the Regional Representatives, and I'm sure most of you have worked with the members of my team. We're going to be rebranded as the External Affairs Team. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you. We work very closely with the Resiliency Group and the LMS to help support these projects. And so I just look forward to working with all of you in the future.
Yeah, I'm Adam Blaylock from DEP, and it was really nice to be able to be here in person. I had intended on coming to one of these in person a lot sooner, but it was really good. Presentations were really informative, and really happy to be able to be a part of the Resilient Florida program. Have a really great staff, as all of you have already pointed out, and so we're looking forward to the budget getting signed. The legislature appropriated $300 million, which will fully fund all 3 years of the state plan and then some. So we'll be looking at those projects to supplement with the additional funding that will be above and beyond what was initially put into the 3-year state plan. So we'll be working through that, and then we'll be starting very soon with the submittals and reviewing the applications that get submitted through our portal for the next fiscal year. So a lot of exciting times, and looking forward to reading the district's plan that they submitted. So thank you very much.
This is Lois Bush with FDOT District 4. The last forum, Jennifer Carver from our central office gave a presentation on the FDOT Resilience Action Plan for the state highway system, which thank you for bringing that up. It's going to be posted, the draft plan will be posted later today with a comment form, and there will be a webinar tomorrow, so I'll rely on Carolina and Dave to send that information out to the group if you'd like to participate in that webinar, and a link to where you can comment on the plan. And just briefly, if you're interested in transportation planning, the Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach MPOs are already working on their updates to their long-range transportation plans to the year 2050. They also do a regional plan together, and they're now figuring out what sort of scenarios to run. And prominent themes in that are resilience, disruptions, and opportunities. So that's happening if you're interested. That's yet another thing to keep on your radar screen.
Amy Eason, coastal engineer for Martin County. We're currently working on updating our vulnerability assessment so that it complies to the Resilient Florida new regulations, doing flood protection and flood-induced or rain-induced modeling as well. Similar to Monroe County, we did complete a watershed management plan and had increased our CRS score from a 6 to a 5, so we're continuing to try to improve that score for our residents as well. As part of our projects, we have the Cypress Creek Restoration Project, where we're enhancing our hydrology and improving the timing of freshwater flows into the Loxahatchee River. We have the MacArthur Boulevard Resilience Project, where we're looking at hardening and elevating an at-risk portion of 0.2 miles of MacArthur Boulevard, which sees a lot of high seas and storm waves that hit it. We also have the old Palm City North neighborhood improvements, where we're going to be adding sewer, replacing drainage, doing swells, elevating roads. We also have a stormwater backflow preventer installation program to help with check valves and preventing that water from coming in inside. And also, we have the Southwest Mockingbird Lane flood mitigation, where we're installing a control structure to keep tidal flooding from impacting a portion of the road, as well as raising the road as well. So we're continually looking at our vulnerabilities and improving our resiliency in Martin County.
Susan Goss from Osceola County. We applaud the district looking at the old CNSF structures in our area. Ian kind of highlighted where they were in their age and their ability to handle what we're seeing as changing events. We are moving forward with our Shingle Creek study and our master surface water management plan. We are also just awaiting the contract for the resiliency study. So that will take our master plan and move it into the future for future events. And we do continue to thank South Florida for putting together this group.
This is great. I think we have, just checking on the back if we have any other person that wants to provide an update, and also checking with Yvette if we have any card for public comments. I know Caitlin already shared a little bit of her public comments, and thank you very much, Caitlin. Anybody else, Yvette?
I do not have any public comment cards.
Okay. With that, I think we're ready to adjourn. We really appreciate your time. I hope to see you next time. I have just a quick remarks about the next meeting. This is on August 30th. It's going to be 9 a.m. here. And we are excited because we're going to be sharing, we didn't touch too much on data today, but on the next meeting, we're going to be sharing updates on, it's the beginning of the wet season, it's the beginning of the king tide season. We have new tools that we are bringing as part of collecting flood observations, evaluating the impacts of those floods, trying to determine extension of flooding. We are in a good momentum. We have some interesting tools, some other learnings through Ian, the data that we collected through Ian, that we're going to share on the next meeting, really anticipating the beginning of the king tide season and also wet season, recognizing. So we are excited for the agenda of the upcoming meeting, and we are collaborating with a lot of local governments there too. And I'm going to share with you all the link for the workshop for the FDOT action plan, resilient action plan. We are on the same page. We are all of us working to provide the data and the list to FDP as requested by the legislation. So it's just a coincidence that we are releasing our plan today and FDOT is releasing tomorrow. We are on the same schedule here to provide the updates to Resilient Florida program. It's exciting to be doing all of that. Okay, with that, I think we are adjourned. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being here.